At Christmas dinner, my fiancé saw the chilling truth. My face was identical in every childhood photo, as if copy-pasted through time. "That's not you," he whispered, pointing to my childhood photo. "They reused your face." 5 hours later, I called the police and told them something I never thought I'd say. I think I was kidnapped 25 years ago, and I just remembered everything. It started over potato salad and Mariah Carey. At Christmas, my mother showed my fiancé our old photo albums. He froze, took my hand and said, "Don't you see it?" "See what? How can you not see it?" I couldn't unsee what he showed me. 5 hours later, I contacted the police. I always assumed that if something like this happened, something life-changing, something worth telling a therapist or a documentary team, it would be accompanied by music. You know, that subtle hum in the background, the dramatic tension, perhaps a thunderclap. But no. There was potato salad. There was overdone lamb. My mother was humming Mariah Carey while cleaning down the kitchen counter, as if she hadn't just weaponized nostalgia for the 20th year in a row. No thunder. Just that strange smell our house has throughout the holidays. Lemon cleanser and something strangely burned. I was not expecting anything. That's the thing. I strolled in, smiled, and pretended this wasn't another annual reminder that I never quite fit inside the frame. Noah, my fiancé, remained his normal calm self. Observant, silent, the type of man who could earn a living simply by noticing things. I had brought him because I believed he could serve as an anchor for me. The joke is on me, I suppose. My sister Brielle was already there, swirling her wine and dressed in something beige and expensive looking. Her guy nodded repeatedly. My folks grinned as if they meant it. Dinner was dinner. Familiar, tight-lipped and tense below the surface. The roast was dry. The raita was sharp. My mom inquired about Brielle's new work. My father asked Noah about the computers as if he had never met a millennial before. Nobody asked me anything, but that's normal. I used to become upset. Now I just count how long it takes them to pretend I'm not present. This year, 9 minutes. After dessert, Mom did what she normally does. She clapped her hands and announced, "I brought the albums out." As if it were a surprise rather than something she had meticulously planned. She always brings records. Always acts as if she discovered them in the hallway closet beneath a pile of dish towels. We all smile, as if we hadn't seen the same stained pages 100 times before. Brielle leaned in as if she were witnessing an awards ceremony. Her lover put on his best, interested expression. Noah sat next to me, quietly. I focused more on him than on the images. The first album featured birthdays, beach excursions, and uncomfortable school shots. The second album features Brielle as a baby. Mom is shining. Dad is proud. My third album is called Me. Noah's behavior changed at that point. He didn't say anything at first, but I noticed it. The way his shoulders stiffened, the way he peered at one page then another, the way he angled his head. Much like when he's retouching a photo and notices a horrible crop. He was scanning, measuring. And then, without looking at me, he grasped my hand beneath the table. "Don't you see it?" he whispered. I blinked. "See what? How can you not see it?" Then he dropped my hand and returned to turning pages as if nothing had occurred. Smiling. Nodding in agreement with my mother's observation that I once attempted to feed a pine cone to a stray cat. I sat there, frozen. My ears were ringing. I attempted to mimic his beat and keep my smile intact, but it seemed like my skin was on backwards. When I leaned in and asked again, he shook his head slightly. "I'll explain later," he replied. "Just go along with it." Which has been my emotional slogan throughout my youth. We left 20 minutes later. Noah made up a story about an early flight, or perhaps it was a late Zoom call. My mother made a fuss. My father didn't care. Brielle did not look up from her phone. I kissed everyone farewell as if I wasn't in turmoil inside. In the car, Noah fished into his coat for a few loose photographs. He must have removed them from the pile next to the albums. I had not even noticed. "Look," he said. I did. Kind of. The first one featured me in a pink coat, standing in front of a stone wall. I have seen it before. It lingered in my memory like awful wallpaper. "What?" I asked. "It's just a photo." He gave me 2 more. "Same face," he said. "Same angle, same smile, same shadows. Look closer." I looked. Then I saw it. That was me. The identical version of myself, copied and pasted into multiple settings. One in front of the fence, one near a swing set, one at the fountain. However, the expression never changed, not a single muscle. They reused my face, I explained. My voice sounded unusual, like if it came from the back of my throat. He nodded. Then he gave me another. A baby. Pale. Lighter hair. Different bone structures. That's not you, he replied. I don't think they ever had baby pictures of you. Last one. My mother and father and I stood in front of an old building. My outline was fuzzy. The shadows did not match. I looked like a sticker that had been partially peeled. I stared at it for quite a while. Then I laughed. Not a genuine laugh. The sound produced when something breaks in your head. So I'm a collage, I explained. That's fun. Noah did not laugh. Why would they fake this? I inquired. He didn't respond. Neither did I. I hadn't realized it yet, but 5 hours later, I'd be calling the cops. Denial does not break all at once. It leaks, like an old pipe under the sink that everyone agrees not to discuss. You know it's dripping. You hear and smell it, but you continue to wash your hands and walk away. I stared at those pictures all night. Noah eventually fell asleep beside me, but I remained motionless. I just sat there in bed like a kid waiting for monsters to appear. Except the monsters were already named. Mom and Dad. The photographs were arranged on my nightstand. I kept checking them, as if they would fix themselves when I wasn't looking. They did not. My face was still there, pasted, triplicated, frozen in a preset expression I couldn't recall making. That baby is still not me. The lighting is still all wrong. And it hit me, not with a scream or a thunderclap of realization, but with a whisper that I couldn't stop hearing. I didn't know where I came from. I mean it literally. I have no memories from before the age of 5. None. When I was younger, I thought that was normal. Or perhaps not quite normal, but at least explicable. My parents explained it was due to the war. I was small. They claimed I was traumatized. They claimed the brain protects itself. They said a lot of things. And I believed them. Because what are the alternatives? Telling your second-grade teacher that you believe you skipped being a toddler. That your earliest memory is of standing in a fluorescent-lit hallway in a new country with your mom telling you to smile at someone holding a clipboard. Yeah, that was my first real memory. The immigration office. The buzz of lights. The feeling that everything was loud and cold and wrong. I didn't understand English yet, but I understood the look in my mom's eyes. Performance. From there, it was normal. As normal as it could be. We had a little apartment. I started school. My mom packed my lunches like the other moms did. Except she didn't write notes. She sent me off with perfectly folded napkins instead. My dad read the paper like it owed him money. They worked hard. They gave me what I needed. But love? That was something else. When my sister Brielle was born 2 years later, the temperature in the house changed overnight. Suddenly there were baby books and camcorder footage and scrapbooks with glitter letters. There were birthday parties with coordinated themes. There were spa days. There were hugs. There was warmth. None of that had been there for me. Ever. With me, it was always. You're strong, you're independent. You never needed much. Which is just another way of saying, we didn't give you much. I used to tell myself it was because I was older. Because I was first. Because they were figuring it out. But now I wasn't so sure. There were no aunts, no uncles, no cousins. No one ever visited from the old country. We never went back. My parents said they had no one left. It was war, they said. Everyone is scattered. I asked about family once. My dad said it was complicated. My mom changed the subject. And then there was the Facebook message. I was 15. I walked into the kitchen and saw her on the laptop. She was staring at a message in a language I couldn't read at the time. Serbian. There was a name I didn't recognize. A woman. The message had hearts in it. My mom's face was blank. Then she deleted it. Blocked the sender. Closed the laptop. When I asked who it was, she said, spam. Spam doesn't send you messages that make your hands shake. But I let it go. Because I always let it go. I was diagnosed with PTSD at 17. Nightmares, panic attacks. This dull, ever-present fear like something was always about to happen. Like I was waiting for a door to slam that never did. My therapist asked me about the war. I told her I didn't remember it. She said that was probably why. Except now I know. I wasn't scared of the war. I was scared of her. I didn't remember that right away. It didn't hit like lightning. It came in pieces. That night, As I sat at the kitchen table staring at the photos Noah had taken, one memory blinked to life like a flashlight in a dark room. A woman. Not my mother. Not the one who raised me. Someone else. A softer face. Dark eyes. She smelled like citrus. I was holding her hand. Then there was another woman. Not the one who raised me. Someone else. A softer voice. Gentle hands. I was holding her hand. Then the woman I grew up calling Mom entered. She was younger and smiled as if she had just arrived. The first woman leaned down and said, in Serbian, "This is your babysitter." It was the first time I met her. Then another flash. I'm pulling on a coat. Crying, saying, "I want Mama." And a hand on my shoulder, tight. "Don't say that again. If you talk about her, you disappear." I remember those words now. I hadn't before. But they were there. Buried beneath years of being told to smile for the camera. Then came the screams. I was in bed. New. Strange. My legs kick. My chest is burning. I was calling for her. The first woman. The person who smelled of citrus. And another voice. Cold. Enough. I'm not sure how long the panic lasted. Perhaps in minutes. Perhaps centuries. Noah discovered me on the kitchen floor, gasping, my palms flat against the tiles as if I was trying to grab something. He attempted to touch me. I flinched. He sat beside me instead, saying nothing. And somewhere in the midst of that, still on the floor, breath caught in my throat, vision swimming, I reached for my phone and dialed 911. The operator answered on the third ring. 911, what's your emergency? My chest was caving in. My mouth opened, but no sound emerged at first. Noah was still kneeling beside me, one hand on my back, as if to anchor my breath. I eventually forced the words out. I've been kidnapped. A pause. Sharper now. Ma'am, are you safe right now? I think so. I'm home. Is the person who took you with you now? Number. It was a long time ago, I think. I just remembered it. Another pause. Then the tone shifts. Gentle. Still in control. Okay. Take a breath for me. You're not in danger right now? No, but it's true. I remember now. They were not my parents. Noah reached over to take the phone. Hi, this is her fiancé. She's having a panic attack. She just came on about 15 minutes ago. She's been uncovering some things, childhood photos that appear to be heavily edited, no birth records, strange inconsistencies. And she just had a very vivid memory. She believes she was kidnapped when she was about 5. It would have happened 25 years ago outside the United States. The operator remained calm. I understand. What's your location? Noah provided our address. I'm going to log this as a welfare check and forward it to the department's investigative unit, she told me. You'll get a call from someone to follow up. If either of you feels unsafe in the meantime, don't wait. Call us back immediately. Noah thanked her. Hung up. I was still shaking, but the words had been spoken aloud to a real person. There was no undoing that. I did not sleep. I showered. I changed clothes. I folded laundry that I hadn't remembered putting in. I believe I emptied the dishwasher at one point. Noah hovered. Made some tea. They watched me as if I were glassware in an earthquake. You should rest, he suggested at one point. I nodded. Did not move. I kept waiting for someone to knock on the door. Or break through it. Or for the floor to simply fall out from beneath me. Instead, the apartment remained quiet. Humming softly, as if it didn't care what happened to me. The next morning, I received an email. Case file is opened. An assigned officer has not yet contacted me. Someone would be in contact. That was it. I showed Noah. He read it twice. Then simply nodded. It's real now, he explained. Real. As if it hadn't been real when I was curled on the kitchen floor, trying to recall whether I'd ever had a mother. The knock arrived 2 days later. 3 taps. Measured, calm, like a favor. I opened the door to see my mother holding a brown paper bag as if she were delivering cookies. My father stood slightly behind her, hands in his coat pockets, expression neutral. Can we come in? She inquired, already moving forward. Noah appeared beside me. I nodded slowly and allowed them in. They sat on the couch as if they were guests. My mother put the paper bag on the coffee table. I brought some of that soup you like, the carrot one from when you were sick that time. When I was 8, She told me to stop crying because I was not going to die. What about that soup? Thanks, I replied flatly. She smoothed her coat and looked around the apartment, as if it would help her decide what to say. My father remained standing. We spoke to the police, she finally said. They said you filed a report. I did. She appeared to want to be offended, but lacked the energy. You should have just come to us first. Would you have told me the truth? She paused, blinked. We didn't want to hurt you. Noah spoke. So it's true. My father finally came forward. Yes, he answered. You're not biologically ours. I exhaled through my nose. Not relief, but rather confirmation of something I already knew but needed someone to say aloud. My mother nodded. Your mother was very young, and she couldn't take care of you. She begged us to bring you with us. Begged? I asked. She wanted you to have a better life. We were leaving and she was staying behind. It was war. She knew what that meant. So where is she now? My mother folded her hands. We don't know. You never checked. It was complicated. Noah crossed his arms. Why fake the photos? My father did not flinch. We didn't want her to feel like she didn't belong. So you erased her real life and invented one? Noah inquired. My mother's voice cracked. You were 5. You cried for her for weeks. It was awful, but you adjusted. You forgot. We thought it was better that way. You could have told me. And said what? She demanded. That we took you from your mother? That you had a life you'd never remember? You would have hated us. You think I don't? Silence. Then she took something from her bag. A photograph. I was about 6 years old and holding my father's hand. This one's real, she said. As if that would solve the problem. I did not touch it. They stood. My father looked at Noah and then at me. We didn't steal you. We rescued you. I didn't respond. Neither did Noah. And the worst part? For about 10 seconds, I nearly believed them. I did not ask them gently. I asked, tell me her name. My mother blinked as if she didn't understand the question. My father did his usual thing, rubbing his face as if he was exhausted from having to deal with me. You were 5, she explained. Your memories, they aren't reliable. Try me. She shakes her head. We didn't want to hurt you. You already did. They looked at each other. Then my father spoke the name as if it were a confession. Mira Petrovich. No address, no contact, just the name. When I asked for more, my mother responded, we lost touch. It was war. Right. War also appears to remove the ability to type a name into Google. We began looking that night. Noah was using his laptop. I was on mine. My Serbian is adequate when speaking with elderly relatives about food, but online research is a different story. Mira Petrovich. Apparently this is not an uncommon name. There were several dead ends. A florist in Novi Sad, a retired gym teacher from Belgrade. I then clicked on a grainy Facebook profile. No smile, no filters. Just a woman with dark hair pulled back, in her early 50s, faint lines around her eyes, and a face that made my stomach drop. I just stared. Noah leaned over. She looks like you, he commented. I shook my head slowly. I look like her. It wasn't just a resemblance. It was the kind of similarity that makes you uncomfortable, the kind you don't see in the mirror until someone else points it out. She hadn't posted for months. But her About section listed a town in southern Serbia. The same one I'd heard once in passing when I was 10 and my mom slipped up. We sent a message. We used Google Translate. It probably sounded robotic, but Noah checked it 3 times. I stared at the screen the entire time like it might answer me back. Hello. I was given your name. I think I might be your daughter. Then we waited. She replied the following morning. 1 line. Can we speak? We scheduled a video call. I don't remember agreeing to it. Noah did all the clicking. I just sat there wrapped in a blanket, feeling as if I was about to meet someone from a dream I hadn't realized I had. Then her face appeared. She appeared older than her profile photo. Tired, but still her. It's still me. She did not speak at first, just stared. Her hand moved to her mouth, as if she needed to hold something in. I wasn't sure, she admitted finally. But now that I see you, I wanted to say something, anything. But the words got stuck behind a lump in my throat. I've been looking for you for 25 years. She mentioned my name. It wasn't Claire then. It was Lena. I froze. Lena. It did not sound familiar. But it felt right. Like a shoe I hadn't worn in decades that still fit. I blinked, trying to remain steady. Did you give me up? Her face broke. Not dramatically, not like in the movies. Just a quiet collapse in her expression. Her mouth opened and then closed again. No, she replied. God, no. She looked off screen for a second, as if she needed to ground herself. Then she turned back. You were 5. I had to leave you with someone I trusted. A neighbor, a friend. For a couple of hours while I went to the municipal office to finish some paperwork. When I returned, you were gone. They said she, your babysitter, had left earlier. You said you went with her. But you never returned home. Her voice crackled. We searched. I went to every police station, every camp, posted flyers, and contacted shelters. Everyone said that children get lost during war. But I knew you hadn't gotten lost. She paused. I just didn't know where to look. I sat very still. Noah was the one to ask. Did you ever apply for leave? She nodded. I was approved for a resettlement program to the United States. Families with children received priority. I had everything ready. She looked at me then. But after you disappeared, they removed me from the list. I wouldn't have left without you. And then it hit me, harder than any memory. That's why. That is why they took me. Why did they need me? Why did they edit me into those photos as if I were the final puzzle piece? They did not take me because they loved me. They took me because I helped them out. We sat quietly for a while after that. Her eyes were red. Mine probably were as well. Noah didn't say anything, just sat next to me, as if he was holding the room's edges together. I never knew where you went, she said softly. I thought maybe someone took you across the border. I wondered if you had died. I had no idea what to hope for. That left me speechless. How do you respond to a woman who has lost you? They changed my name, I explained instead. Claire, she nodded as if the sound hurt. My Lena was your grandmother's name. I'm not sure what I expected to feel. Rage? Relief? I felt hollow, as if someone had reached inside and scooped everything out before politely leaving the shell so I could continue to function in public. 2 weeks later, we stood side by side in the precinct. She wore a navy coat. I brought the photographs. The officer took our statements. They asked us questions that I can barely remember answering. My mom, my real mother, took a creased flyer from her purse. The original missing persons notification. My name is the first one printed beneath a grainy photograph. Lena Petrovich, aged 5, was last seen wearing a red scarf. This is her, she informed the officer. This is my daughter. For the first time, someone else nodded. We pressed charges. And I stopped pretending the past belonged to anyone other than myself. It did not go to trial. They were found guilty during the investigation: immigration fraud, falsifying federal documents, concealing a child abduction across international borders. It turns out they never gave up their Serbian passports. They simply tucked them away in a drawer next to their moral compass. Their American citizenship was revoked. They were deported within 6 months. No appeals, no second chances. And they can never return. Brielle stayed. Of course she did. She was born here. At first she said little. I just stared at the floor a lot. Then one day she approached me and said, "That was really messed up." It wasn't an apology exactly. But there was something. We talk more now than we did growing up. She isn't my blood sister, but she knows how I drink my coffee. That counts for something. Anya, my real mother, moved to the United States 6 months after everything was settled. Family reunification program. Noah and I assisted with the paperwork. She got a job in a bakery near our apartment. She says it reminds her of the one she worked at when she was 21, before everything happened. We're planning a wedding. She is on the guest list. She cried when she received the invitation. The people who raised me have lost everything. And honestly, they built their lives around a lie. So when it collapsed, I didn't feel bad. I felt free. My stepfather thought he'd won, after the judge, his best friend, sent me back. But one whispered sentence to my foster mom took them both to jail. I ran away when I was 12 years old and never once looked back. The punishment room, as my stepfather called it, was nothing more than our cold basement storage area. The floor was cracked concrete, The air had a permanent chill, and the space always smelled of damp cardboard boxes and forgotten things. It was his preferred method of discipline, silent, isolating, and terrifyingly effective. That particular night, I'd committed the crime of studying past 9 p.m. I'd hidden my small desk lamp under layers of clothing, letting just enough glow escape so I could prepare for an important biology test. My stepfather had a strict lights-out rule, more for control than any real concern about my sleep schedule. The moment I felt his hand clamp down on my shoulder, my blood ran cold. "What part of lights out at 9 o'clock don't you understand?" he said softly. He never shouted, he didn't need to. His quiet voice was worse than yelling. "I have a biology test tomorrow," I whispered, my voice trembling, knowing my excuse wouldn't matter. He tightened his grip until pain flared through my shoulder. 3 days without food," he replied evenly. "Maybe then you'll learn how to manage your time better." Without another word, he marched me to the basement door, forced me to watch as he slowly tore each page from my biology textbook, scattering the torn paper onto the floor. "You'll clean this mess tomorrow," he said, shoving me down the stairs before locking the door behind him. This wasn't new, but tonight was different. I had been planning for weeks, slowly loosening the screws of the small basement window that led to the backyard. I had started this after witnessing him throw my mother down those same stairs. Even after that, she had lied to the neighbor, claiming she'd simply tripped. That day I realized nobody was coming to save us. It was up to me. I waited for hours in silence, listening until his breathing machine hummed steadily upstairs, and my mother's anxiety meds had sent her into a deep sleep. Finally, around 3 in the morning, I moved carefully toward the window. My heart pounded with each creak of the old wooden stairs, but when I pressed the window frame, it swung outward without a sound. With just enough room to squeeze through, I took only my school backpack stuffed hastily with clothes, my birth certificate stolen from my mother's filing cabinet, and $340 earned from months of quietly tutoring younger kids at the local library. Mrs. Rodriguez had always paid in cash and pretended not to notice the bruises that covered my arms beneath the sleeves. I didn't dare go to a friend's house. It would have been the first place anyone looked. Instead, I headed straight to school, slipping through the broken gate behind the gymnasium. A week earlier, I'd hidden an old sleeping bag inside the equipment shed, just in case. For 2 weeks, that small dusty shed became home. Every morning I slipped into school early, washed quickly in the athletic locker rooms before classes, and then blended seamlessly into the crowd. I maintained perfect grades, tutored other students during lunch breaks, and did everything possible to stay invisible. Teachers assumed I was fine because my homework was always handed in early, my grades impeccable. Nobody bothered to look closer. Then came the Amber Alert. It happened suddenly during English class. Phones buzzed simultaneously, lighting up the faces of students around me. My face appeared everywhere. Missing child, possible abduction. I felt my stomach twist painfully. That evening, local news stations aired tearful pleas from my stepfather. He held my hollow-eyed mother close, his voice trembling convincingly for the cameras. "Please bring our daughter home," he begged, a perfect mask of concern. The same man who had dislocated my shoulder teaching me to swing a softball bat correctly, the same man who'd let our dog freeze to death outside last winter. The next day at school was a nightmare. Students constantly scanned each other's faces, whispering and speculating. I wore my hoodie pulled low, ate lunch in bathroom stalls, and kept moving, terrified of recognition. My luck finally ran out during my free period. I had drifted into a restless sleep behind the tall shelves of the library's biography section when the librarian, Mrs. Amanda, startled me awake. Recognition dawned clearly in her eyes, but instead of saying anything immediately, she simply walked away. My heart raced, adrenaline surging. I grabbed my bag, ready to flee, but before I could, she returned quietly, compassion etched deeply into her gentle face. "Carrara," she said softly, "come to my office, please." With no choice I followed, mentally calculating escape routes. Inside, Mrs. Amanda gently closed the door and lowered the blinds. Her eyes searched mine carefully. "Everyone's looking for you," she said gently, yet her voice held no accusation. I nodded silently. "Are you safe at home?" she asked softly, her voice thick with unspoken concern. I almost lied out of habit, out of fear, but something in her quiet empathy broke through my defenses. Slowly, deliberately, I rolled up my sleeves, revealing the series of small, circular scars burned into my skin from extinguished cigarettes. Then, hesitating only briefly, I lifted my shirt to expose the belt welts across my back. "There's more," I whispered. "But you understand." Without hesitation, she picked up the phone not to call my parents but social services. Then she handed me her own lunch turkey and Swiss on wheat, apple slices on the side. It was the first real meal I'd eaten in days. When social workers arrived, they documented every injury, recording my testimony meticulously. For once, adults listened, believed me. Within hours, police had found evidence corroborating my story. Blood on the basement walls from desperate attempts to escape, a makeshift toilet bucket in the corner, and my mother's suspicious medical records documenting repeated injuries. My stepfather was arrested the same evening. Mrs. Amanda held my trembling hand as we watched him being led away in cuffs. Everyone assured me it was an open and shut case. 20 years, minimum, the prosecutor confidently promised. Then came the trial. Mrs. Amanda and my foster parents supported me quietly from behind. But when the judge entered, my blood froze solid in my veins. I knew him instantly from every smiling photo in my stepfather's home office. It was his closest friend, his college roommate of 30 years. The judge looked directly at me, and with a cold, knowing smile began reading his decision. After reviewing the evidence, I'm ordering immediate family reunification. I felt the world collapse around me, hope slipping rapidly through my fingers. The judge's words reverberated through the courtroom, each syllable echoing ominously in my mind. Family reunification. I was going back to the man who had spent years meticulously destroying my sense of self-worth and safety. My legs felt numb, rooted firmly in place by dread and disbelief. Behind me, Mrs. Amanda surged to her feet, her voice a mix of fury and desperation. "You have to recuse yourself. This is a clear conflict of interest." Her hands gripped the wooden barrier tightly, knuckles white from the strain. Security officers moved swiftly toward her, their intentions clear. The prosecutor frantically searched his files, papers scattering around him like fallen leaves. He found a conflict of interest form, still blank, and his expression darkened in horror. The judge remained eerily calm, reclining slightly as he clarified in a measured, chilling voice. "I have no legal obligation to recuse myself based on a casual acquaintance. There's nothing improper about my involvement here." I saw my stepfather subtly adjust his tie, a faint smirk dancing briefly at the corner of his mouth. The gesture was subtle but chilling. My foster mother grabbed my hand beneath the table, her grip urgent, reassuring despite her trembling fingers. "We'll appeal," she whispered desperately, though the social worker was already approaching, transition paperwork firmly in hand. Mrs. Amanda tried again to intercept, pleading for an audience with the judge in his chambers. Security blocked her path, leading her forcefully from the room. My stepfather rose slowly, the embodiment of false relief. His gaze locked firmly onto mine, silently daring me to resist. In that moment, 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind. Should I make a scene, validate their accusations that I was an unstable runaway? Or comply quietly, praying for another chance? Across the room, the prosecutor caught my eye. His lips silently formed 2 words. "I'm sorry." With that quiet apology echoing in my head, I chose to remain calm. As security escorted Mrs. Amanda away, I leaned close to my foster parents and whispered urgently, "Check my library cubby." They looked confused, but I could only hope they'd soon understand. The days after returning home were a blur of heightened surveillance. My stepfather instituted random searches, meticulously rifling through my backpack each evening. I anticipated this, hiding crucial evidence in a flash drive filled with recordings inside my calculator. During a brief restroom break at school, I discreetly transferred it to the lining of my shoe, always staying several steps ahead. Then Mrs. Amanda disappeared from school, abruptly barred from the premises following her courtroom outburst. Word spread quickly her position was under immediate review. The loss felt devastating, yet hope sparked anew when the substitute librarian, Ms. Alicia, subtly communicated through a discreet gesture a signal Mrs. Amanda had taught me, indicating a trusted ally. I cautiously responded, confirming her alliance. Ms. Alicia's eyes brightened momentarily with relief and recognition. Quietly, carefully, she passed a coded message during class, confirming she was part of the teacher protection network Mrs. Amanda had established. At home, I made another painful discovery. My mother's medication had tripled, rendering her compliant and barely responsive. My stepfather had essentially weaponized her prescriptions, neutralizing any risk she might present as a witness. Faced with an impossible choice, I decided to secretly intervene. Over weeks I subtly reduced her medication, hiding surplus pills and adjusting the logs to appear normal. Gradually, her alertness returned, prompting suspicion from my stepfather. He quickly arranged an emergency doctor's appointment, intent on restoring his control. However, something significant had changed. During a computer class, I accessed an anonymous email account, carefully evading the school's monitoring systems. Using a memorized contact with the federal prosecutor, I sent a brief yet urgent message. Evidence available, urgent. The response was swift and concise, instructing me to leave evidence at a grocery store drop site frequented by Mrs. Amanda. Taking advantage of my mother's newfound lucidity, we visited the store under the guise of routine shopping. There I discreetly deposited the hidden flash drive containing recordings that meticulously detailed my stepfather's abuse and manipulation. Days later, federal marshals swarmed the judge's home during his weekly poker game, arresting him in a public spectacle. My stepfather watched helplessly as his closest ally was dragged into the national spotlight, the scandal exploding into a full-fledged investigation. The case rapidly escalated. A new judge renowned for advocating child welfare and impartiality took charge, scheduling an emergency hearing. My stepfather had just 3 days to prepare, which meant 3 days of escalating control, frantic desperation, and potential violence. But the tide had undeniably turned. The upcoming hearing was now a national interest, attracting intense media scrutiny and comprehensive federal oversight. The small family court had transformed into a battleground for justice. Hope, though cautious and fragile, had returned, brighter and stronger than ever. The courtroom was transformed the day of the emergency hearing. Federal prosecutors occupied seats beside local officials, child advocates crowded the gallery, and journalists lined the back rows, notebooks ready and cameras rolling. This was no longer a quiet family matter. It had become a public reckoning. My mother testified first. With her medication properly managed under medical supervision, she described clearly the years of emotional manipulation, physical abuse, and control exerted by my stepfather. Her voice trembled when recounting the night she found me in the basement. Bloodied hands scraping desperately against concrete walls. When the prosecutors played my recorded evidence, silence blanketed the room. My voice filled the courtroom, calmly detailing each horrific event. I described the punishments, the isolation, and my mother's forced sedation. My words hung heavily in the air, undeniable and damning. My stepfather's lawyer desperately attempted to portray me as troubled and unreliable, grasping at straws to discredit the overwhelming evidence. But medical records didn't lie. X-rays revealing healed fractures. Photographs documenting cigarette burns. Scars clearly marking years of trauma. Finally, it was my turn to testify. The prosecutor questioned me gently, but thoroughly. I rolled up my sleeves once more, showing scars both old and new. I spoke clearly, recounting each horrific experience with steady composure. When I described the soundproof basement, a recent chilling modification my stepfather had made, my stepfather leaped from his seat, losing all composure. "Ungrateful liar," he roared, his carefully constructed mask shattered completely. Court officers swiftly restrained him as he continued to shout denials and threats, his true nature finally exposed. The new judge's decision came swiftly and unequivocally. Immediate removal from my stepfather's custody, recommended criminal charges, and conditional custody granted to my mother, provided she continued therapy and supervision. Relief flooded through me as court officers led my stepfather away, handcuffed and furious. Mrs. Amanda was waiting outside, her reinstatement complete following the arrest of the corrupt judge. Now serving as my educational advocate, she embraced me fiercely, whispering, "You did it, you're safe now." In the months that followed, our lives gradually stabilized. My mother committed fully to therapy, steadily regaining her independence and strength. My foster parents became a permanent part of our support network, guiding us through recovery. Eventually, my stepfather faced trial and received a 15-year sentence. Meanwhile, my bruises healed, grades recovered, and life settled into a comforting routine. At school, I noticed other kids quiet, withdrawn, with shadows behind their eyes similar to mine. During lunch breaks, I tutored them quietly, teaching them chemistry while discreetly guiding them on documenting abuse, seeking allies like Mrs. Amanda, and never giving up. I carried a calculator with a hidden compartment not for my own evidence anymore, but containing emergency contacts for those students. It was a small gesture, but I hoped it might give them the strength to find their own paths to safety. Justice, I learned, wasn't guaranteed, it had to be fought for. But it was possible, especially when we refused to be silent. As I packed up my books one afternoon, my phone buzzed a text from my mother telling me dinner was ready. Walking home to a house now filled with warmth and hope, I knew I'd reclaimed my life. The frightened child who had crawled through that basement window felt distant, but her courage remained close, a constant reminder of the strength it took not just to survive, but to thrive and to help others do the same. Just when I thought my life had finally reached a place of peace, reality crashed through once more, shattering the fragile normalcy I'd built. It started subtly, a feeling of being watched, vague discomfort I couldn't quite pinpoint. At first, I dismissed it as residual paranoia from my past, convincing myself that years of trauma couldn't just vanish overnight. But then, anonymous notes began appearing in my locker at school, cryptic messages reminding me ominously, "It's not over yet." Fear seeped slowly back into my life, tightening its grip with every passing day. I tried to hide my anxiety from my mother and Mrs. Amanda, desperate to protect the newfound stability we'd fought so hard for. But my mask slipped one evening when my mother found me pale and shaking after discovering another note tucked inside my textbook. Together, we went immediately to the authorities, but there was little they could do without tangible evidence. The notes were clean, no fingerprints, no clues to their origin. Security cameras at school showed nothing unusual, leaving me feeling more vulnerable than ever. My anxiety spiraled when I received a chilling message on my phone. "You destroyed my family, now I'll destroy yours." My heart sank. The sender was anonymous, but the threat was unmistakably real. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone connected to my stepfather's past was behind this. The investigation eventually revealed a harrowing truth. My stepfather's younger brother, whom I'd never met and barely knew existed, had silently been watching from the shadows, consumed by vengeance for what he saw as my betrayal. Obsessed and resentful, he blamed me entirely for his brother's imprisonment. He'd been meticulously planning his revenge for months, driven by the twisted belief that destroying my life would somehow vindicate his brother's actions. Authorities apprehended him just before his threats could escalate into physical harm. But the damage was done. The fragile sense of safety I'd fought for had been shattered yet again. Even as the police led him away, the raw wounds reopened, forcing me to confront once more the painful reality of how deeply trauma could embed itself. Recovery, I realized, was not linear. Safety was not guaranteed, it was something I would have to constantly fight for. This time, however, I wasn't alone. My mother, Mrs. Amanda, my foster parents, and even the kids I'd quietly helped all stood beside me, forming an unbreakable shield of support. Together, we took the necessary steps forward, reaffirming that no matter how many times darkness returned, I would never again face it alone. In the wake of that final, terrifying confrontation, a profound shift occurred, not only within myself but also within my community. Media attention returned once more, this time highlighting resilience and hope rather than tragedy. My story was shared widely, transforming from a narrative of victimhood to one of empowerment and courage. I began receiving letters from others who'd endured similar hardships, thanking me for speaking out and showing them they weren't alone. Inspired, I collaborated with Mrs. Amanda, my mother, and local child advocacy groups to establish a community initiative aimed at supporting young survivors of abuse. We named it the Hope Initiative, a resource hub and safe space offering counseling, legal support, educational resources, and mentorship programs. It quickly grew into a vibrant center, funded by donations from people who believed in our mission. One evening, standing before an auditorium filled with survivors, supporters, and friends, I shared my journey openly. I spoke of the fear, the setbacks, but most importantly, the unyielding strength found in community and compassion. "My past does not define me," I said firmly, my voice steady and confident. "And neither does yours. Together, we reclaim our lives. Together, we heal. Together, we ensure no one ever faces this alone." The applause that erupted was overwhelming, not just because of support for me, but because of what it represented: hope, solidarity, and transformation. In that moment, I knew I'd reclaimed not just my own story, but helped countless others begin to rewrite theirs. Today, as I walk through the doors of the Hope Initiative each morning, greeting familiar faces and welcoming new ones, I realize my journey wasn't about escaping the past. It was about transforming pain into purpose. And in choosing my purpose, I found my peace. After my brother and his girlfriend leaked my baby news to my violent ex, he threatened to kidnap my son. So I cut them off. But they still blamed me when he died. My family is now divided after my brother and his girlfriend leaked my baby news to my violent ex. My name is Lauren, and a few years ago I experienced something that altered the trajectory of my life. I had been with Dylan, my ex-boyfriend, for more than 5 years. We were both 27 at the time, and our relationship was progressing toward marriage and looking for a home together. But everything came undone in our final year together. Dylan experienced a sudden psychotic episode, which turned our world upside down. For his own protection, he was sent to the hospital's mental health institution. When he returned home, he looked completely different. His personality had totally altered. He began to have acute delusions, hallucinations, and persistent paranoia. The person I had fallen in love with had vanished, replaced by someone who didn't recognize me as the one who wanted to assist. He accused me of cheating, asserted that I was influencing others around him, and often expressed his hatred for me. It was heartbreaking. After some time, he was released from the hospital, and I took responsibility for him, hoping against hope that he would recover. I sat through every mental health visit, and I stayed awake many nights to ensure he didn't wander off during his psychotic episodes. But as he grew angry, his paranoia became oppressive and impossible to penetrate. He no longer trusted me, however, he refused to let me leave his sight, believing that I was betraying him. When I finally noticed a tiny improvement, I made the most difficult decision I'd ever made. I broke up with him. I waited until I believed he was stable enough to be on his own before assisting him in returning to his parents' home. The shame struck me like a tidal wave. I felt as if I were abandoning him. But I had nothing left inside me to contribute. I hadn't been loved for months. I was merely the emotional punching bag, all the while weeping for the man I once knew who would not return. To safeguard his privacy, I will not disclose certain specifics about his illness. But I've never blamed him. I needed to save myself. I chose happiness, even if it meant going through a messy, traumatic split. Despite everything, we attempted to stay friends, at least for a while. Throughout this time, I continued to assist him whenever possible. Dylan still hoped we'd reconcile someday, but I was moving on. It wasn't long before I met Ethan, an excellent person who is now my partner, and a few years older than me at 30. Dylan went into a major psychotic episode when he discovered I was seeing Ethan. He threatened both of us, believing that I had been dishonest to him with Ethan, despite the fact that I had not met Ethan until after Dylan and I had broken up. The threats and messages were severe and unrelenting. My sole thoughts were about our safety and Dylan's well-being. So I contacted his family and explained what had transpired. They were able to get him help. I realized I could no longer communicate with Dylan. Trying to hold on to the remnants of our friendship was only making matters worse for both of us. The only connection I had to Dylan was Maya, my brother's girlfriend. Maya is 29, and she and Dylan have been friends for many years. She was aware of all the negative aspects of our relationship but never took sides. I considered her a friend, and it soothed me to know Dylan still had someone he could rely on, even if it wasn't me. Then, in March 2022, my life took another shift. I found I was 3 months pregnant with Ethan's baby and was still coming to terms with it. I gently broke the news to my family and a few close friends. I pleaded with everyone to keep it private. I was not prepared for a public announcement. I was a cranky, anxious mess, nauseated and overwhelmed at the prospect of dealing with any additional stress. But less than 24 hours after informing my family, my phone rang. It was Dylan. In a message, he said he knew I was pregnant, and then, in a bizarre twist, said he was suing for custody of the kid. My heart sank. I could tell he was heading for another episode. I did not answer, but instead notified his family that he had attempted to contact me. I could only pray they'd be able to keep him safe and that the drama wouldn't jeopardize the fragile new life I was just starting. By this point, Dylan and I had not spoken in over a year. He had no idea where I lived or worked, so I wasn't scared about him showing up to physically confront me. He could only have learned any details from Maya. I called her to confront her, and she immediately admitted it. She apologized profusely, stating that she had not considered the consequences. She thought Dylan would be all right with the news and felt he deserved to know. I was outraged, but since I hadn't explicitly commanded her not to tell Dylan, perhaps she made an honest mistake. I had told her to keep the news to herself, but I suppressed my rage to maintain the peace. I forgive her, but I made it very clear that she was not to tell Dylan any further information about me or the baby. She agreed. She vowed it would not happen again. I hadn't heard from Dylan in months. Then, last weekend, Ethan and I celebrated our baby shower. We organized it as a party rather than a traditional baby shower, with a booked function room at a bar, and 80 people we cared about coming to celebrate. For a time, the night seemed ideal. Laughter, hugs, and enthusiasm are all I wanted to remember about this new chapter. Then, in the midst of it all, I noticed Dylan standing near the bar, scanning the throng. My stomach sank. I managed to get away before he noticed me and alerted the security personnel. Our gathering location was fenced off for us, so I just informed them that he had not been invited. I watched, heart racing as security approached him. His face distorted in rage, and he began ranting, asking to speak with me before leaving. Ethan and some of our friends raced over to attempt to calm him down, but the situation quickly deteriorated. He screamed at Ethan, stating to everyone that he was the baby's biological father, and that Ethan and I had never truly split up. At that time I fled and hid in the ladies' room, scared, until my mother arrived and assured me Dylan had departed. After more ranting, he departed. I felt humiliated. The party finished early. I could not stop crying. A couple days have passed. My emotions had not settled, so I resolved to confront Maya. She was the only person who could have told Dylan where and when the baby shower was taking place. This time, I did not hold back. Maya admitted it right away and apologized again. But then she asked, "How could I keep this a secret from him?" That enraged me beyond words. I told her, in a voice I barely knew, that she would no longer receive any information about me or the baby, and that I was removing her from my life. I'm not proud of the way I screamed, but I was in shock. How could she be so irresponsible? It was not her news to share. My brother called me later to seek forgiveness on Maya's behalf. He recognized she was wrong, but he didn't think he should be punished alongside her, knowing that if I shut her out, I'd also cut him off from baby updates. He even pleaded with me to blame Dylan for his reaction rather than Maya, claiming that she had no idea he would turn up and that the damage had already been done. I honestly don't blame Dylan for what occurred. He is profoundly mentally sick and needs assistance. It is not solely his fault. And I know deep down that he will regret everything one day, when he is in a better place. After everything that happened, I contacted his family. They informed me that he had been readmitted to the mental health unit after threatening to hurt himself if he was not permitted to visit my kid. As much as my heart bleeds for what he is going through, my emotions are clear. I do not feel safe anymore. I have a child to protect, and the idea that Dylan thinks this baby is his scares me. I haven't spoken with Maya or my brother. My family believes I'm being overly harsh, and that my brother has the right to meet his niece or nephew. We still don't know the gender, but the truth is that I can't trust Maya. She's already betrayed me once, and my rage is still burning. I keep thinking, what if Dylan confronted me in the shower or something worse? Something could have gone wrong. Now I'm stuck in the anguish of not knowing what to do. My heart bleeds at the thought of my brother not getting to meet the kid for a long time. But I'm also worried that Maya will leak something else to Dylan, putting us in serious risk. My parents and the rest of my family have all agreed not to tell Maya or my brother anything about the baby, otherwise they would both be shut out. Still, I'm not sure how long I can keep doing this before I give up. Ethan, thankfully, is absolutely on my side. Without him, I'd be a disaster. I am desperate for guidance. It's becoming increasingly difficult for me to stand firm and maintain these boundaries. I keep fearing that news will get through to Maya or another family member. My parents in particular appear reluctant to guarantee that they will not notify my brother after the kid is born. I feel like I am hanging on by a thread. Update 1. I knew I needed to provide an update, especially since so many people had warned me about Maya, 29 female, and heartbreakingly, they were correct. My life changed quickly. My baby came earlier than expected. I am delighted to announce that Ethan, 30 million, and I now have a beautiful boy, who is already 10 weeks old, and was born at 38 weeks. Ethan and I are completely in love with him, and couldn't be happier. Shortly after my initial encounter, Ethan and I made a major decision. We relocated from our small one-bedroom apartment to a larger house to accommodate our growing family. Distance played an important role in our decision. Our apartment was only 5 minutes away from my brother and Maya's, and I couldn't bear the thought of Dylan, 27M, showing there suddenly, especially since I felt Maya knew our address. Our new location is now about a 45-minute drive away, which adds another layer of safety. We did not provide them with the address. We moved into our new house, and the first month was pleasantly calm. Dylan's family informed me that he was still suffering from a significant mental health crisis, and was being held in the hospital for an extended period of time due to a psychotic episode that refused to go away. He was refusing the medication. I had also alerted his family about the extent of his relationship with Maya, and they took it seriously. They told the hospital that Maya should not be permitted to visit. My family finally ceased urging me to forgive Maya. My mother in particular had an open discussion with me and finally realized why I had to break off my brother. It crushed my heart to distance myself from someone I had always cared deeply for. But all of your advice reverberated in my ears, and I understood I needed to take something to safeguard my baby. Of course, things did not remain calm. A few months later, Dylan called. He had finally been freed from the hospital. He was mortified, apologized for his unexpected behavior at the baby shower, and stated he was aware the kid was not his. He sobbed and asked if he could speak with Ethan personally to apologize. Ethan refused, still hurt. I told Dylan I forgive him, and that it wasn't his fault, but I couldn't let him near me or the kid. If he tried, I would not hesitate to inform the police. He appeared to accept it, so we hung up. But 2 weeks later, Dylan showed up at Ethan's workplace, asking to meet him and pleading for forgiveness. Ethan explained the experience to me. Dylan broke down, apologized, and rambled in a way that made it evident he was still unstable, saying, "I'm so sorry for confronting you in public like that. I should have spoken to you privately. Clearly, you didn't know the baby wasn't yours, and you were humiliated in front of your friends." Ethan didn't want to aggravate the situation, so he played it calm, stating he accepted Dylan's apologies and asked him to leave. Ethan immediately contacted me to explain what had transpired. Hearing this devastated me. Maya must have told Dylan where Ethan worked. I contacted Dylan's family again. The next day, they informed me that Dylan had not arrived home. He was not only not authorized to drive because he had lost his license for speeding multiple times, but he had also taken his mother's car without her consent. Days later, authorities discovered him very bewildered inside a building under construction 20 hours away from our house. He was transferred to a local hospital and then admitted again. His relatives flew up to get him. There has been no fresh update as of today. His family vows to keep me informed if he is ever released. After that, my brother contacted me and asked if we could meet. He seemed upset, so I agreed. Lunch at McDonald's. That day, he poured everything out. Dylan had returned to their residence to see Maya after being admitted to a psychiatric hospital shortly after the baby shower. My brother was on high alert, seeing Dylan was manic and acting improperly with Maya, way too touchy-feely, to which Maya responded in a flirtatious manner. My brother was so embarrassed that he made up an excuse that he and Maya needed to go somewhere. He approached her afterward, but Maya swore she was not flirting, and Dylan had not touched her. My brother dropped it. Dylan arrived at Ethan's employment shortly thereafter, on the same day. Dylan returned to their residence, but this time, Maya was working. My brother works at home. Dylan admitted everything right there. He adored Maya. They'd been sleeping together and then handed my brother a plethora of texts to prove he wasn't lying. My brother instantly requested him to leave. When Maya arrived home, he confronted her. She initially denied it, but then broke down and said it was all true. She pleaded my brother's forgiveness and admitted that after the baby shower she realized she didn't love Dylan. But my brother was furious and urged her to go stay with her parents for a time. I have not heard from Maya since. It has been months. Their relationship, as far as I know, has ended. My brother feels terrible about what Maya did to me, but as much as I want to accept him back into my life, I can't trust that he'll never rejoin with Maya. Because they haven't legally broken up, I won't post our new address or images of our son until I'm certain it's finished. So yet, my brother has only met my son once, at my parents' home. I still don't understand why Maya included Dylan in my pregnancy, but I'm so grateful to have them both out of my life. I have not seen or heard from Maya or Dylan since. I live in continual worry that Dylan may show up again. Their intrusion has left a mark. I have developed obsessive tendencies. Before I can sleep, I must check all of the doors and windows 5 times to ensure that they are locked. Aside from that, life has been more tranquil. Ethan and I are finally able to settle in and enjoy our wonderful new lives as parents. Update 2. I figured I'd provide another update because so much has happened and things have been on my mind. Unfortunately, I do not have good news this time around. There was one positive thing. My brother had finally broken up with Maya. Things between us are still strained after all that happened, but at least we can talk now, even if it's only courteous. Life with Ethan and our new baby has been great. Being a new parent is extremely difficult, but I enjoy every moment. I haven't returned to work since my maternity leave, and I'm grateful that Ethan makes enough to allow me to stay at home until I'm ready to go back. But then there's the Dylan story. For a long time I heard nothing from him or his family. I learned shortly after the last explosion that he was receiving long-term mental health treatment. Then came quiet. I regarded that as a positive indication. Normally, Dylan's silence signaled that things were not getting out of control. However, around a month ago, at 2 a.m., I received a strange text message from him. I hadn't noticed it immediately away, but once I did, it didn't make sense. He talked about encountering someone who had returned from the future, saying he was being followed and needed to hide. He referenced Christopher Nolan, the film director, and said that there were secret messages in his films that would help him win $1 million using some sort of hidden numbers. Believe it or not, communications like that were not new to me, so I was not astonished or concerned. I just took a screenshot and texted it to his sister to inform her that he had reached out. Then I forgot about it. His sister did not respond, which seemed weird. She is frequently fast to answer. 2 days later, she called me crying. She wondered if I had heard anything else from Dylan that evening. I told her no. That's when she told me Dylan committed suicide just hours after sending that message to me and 20 other people. I don't know all of the details, but he supposedly stole his mother's car again that night, despite the fact that she had properly hidden her keys. He ransacked the house and discovered them. Then he drove throughout the city, and nobody knew what was on his mind. What I do know is that he hit another car and pushed it off the road. They collided with a tree. Fortunately, the young couple inside, both aged 17, were not seriously injured. Later, I discovered that it was all caught on a dash cam. He sped up behind them, struck them from behind, and drove away. It was a hit and run. According to what we know, Dylan sent his weird, anxious message only 15 minutes after the accident. 3 hours later, he was gone. I won't go into detail about how the funeral came and went. I did not attend. It just didn't feel right, given our convoluted background. Strangely, Maya left. I only know because she snapped a selfie of herself crying at the funeral and put it on Instagram with a rambling statement about the necessity of mental health care and caring for others. I felt disgusted. It's been quite difficult to process what happened. I feel awful even saying it. But I'm relieved that my family no longer has to worry. I miss him. But in some ways, I believe I had already grieved for the Dylan I knew when he began to change during our relationship. It hurts worse now that he is no longer here. I can't fathom how his family feels. It's very terrible for everyone, and it crushes my heart that things ended this way. We all hoped he'd recover, that the psychosis and mania would simply fade away. Dylan was a decent person, but his life was irrevocably changed by mental illness. Update 3. I hadn't planned to write another update so soon, but life has thrown me another curveball that I'm still trying to figure out. It's been 3 months after Dylan's death, and just when I thought things were getting back to normal, everything fell apart again. About 2 weeks ago I received a call from Dylan's sister, Olivia. She was crying, which immediately set me on edge. Every call from Dylan's family in recent years has delivered awful news, but this time was different. She informed me that they had been looking through Dylan's stuff, attempting to sort out his affairs, when they discovered something that made them sick to their stomachs. A box containing printed images of me and Ethan was discovered hidden in his closet, wrapped in an old sweater. Not just a few hundred of them. Photos show us in the grocery store, walking to our car, Ethan leaving for work, and me pushing the baby stroller through our neighborhood. Some were taken from across the street, while others appeared to be inside parked automobiles. The timestamps on the back indicate that they were taken across several months, up until a few days before his death. My blood became chilly. Our new residence, which we'd relocated to especially to escape the drama he'd discovered us in. He had been following us for months and we had no idea. However, that wasn't the worst part. The box contained a journal page as well as pages of Dylan's handwritten notes. Olivia read me some portions over the phone, and I needed to sit down. He had developed comprehensive plans for stealing our baby. He was convinced that if he could just get the kid alone, he'd be able to show to everyone that it was his. There were drawings of our house plan, notes about our daily routines, and speculation about which window would be the simplest to access the nursery through. The most disturbing entry was dated only 2 days before his death. Lauren will understand eventually. She will forgive me after she sees how happy the baby is with his actual father. Ethan is simply bewildered. I need to save my son from the lie they are all living. I phoned the cops right away. Fortunately, they took it seriously. However, because Dylan is no longer alive, they are only able to file a report. They increased patrols in our neighborhood and made some security recommendations. Ethan has been amazing throughout this. He promptly took time off work to construct a complete security system that included cameras and motion sensors. The really bizarre thing is that we now believe we know how Dylan discovered our new address. Remember when my brother met our baby at my parents' house? My mother had scribbled our new address on a birthday card she intended to send us later that week on the same day. She had left it sitting on the kitchen counter when my brother was present. When I confronted my brother about it, he broke down. He maintained he didn't give Dylan our address on purpose, but he admitted that seeing the kid made him feel horrible, and he called Maya to tell her about seeing his nephew. During that chat, he may have indicated that we had relocated rather far away, and made a statement about my parents requiring the address to send mail. He believes Maya could have gathered together facts and shared it with Dylan during one of their covert encounters. My brother is heartbroken. He's been pleading for forgiveness, but I've told him I need time to comprehend everything. I don't know how to deal with the knowledge that his ex-girlfriend's romance with Dylan partly led to Dylan pursuing us for months. The strangest part of all this occurred yesterday. I was in the park with the infant when a woman approached me. She appeared familiar, but I didn't recognize her until she introduced herself. She was the mother of one of the adolescents Dylan injured in the vehicle accident. She recognized me from images that the police had given her family during the investigation. She sat next to me on the bench and told me something I didn't expect to hear. Dylan reportedly contacted the hospital several times after the accident to talk with her daughter while she was healing. The medical personnel assumed he was phoning to apologize or inquire about her recuperation. However, this woman had a different theory. She assumed Dylan was attempting to determine whether her daughter had seen his face during the accident and might identify him. He was planning something bigger, she explained gently, watching her kid play on the swings. I can feel it. When I heard about what they found in his room, about his obsession with your family, I think that accident might have been practice. Or a distraction. I'm not sure what to trust anymore. The police said there is no proof that the vehicle crash was anything more than reckless driving during a mental episode. But this woman's remarks have haunted me. What if Dylan's death wasn't only the tragic conclusion to his mental health issues? What if he was preparing for something even worse? I've been experiencing panic attacks again. When I hear a car door bang or see an unusual vehicle in our neighborhood, my heart races. Ethan recommended we consider moving again, possibly to a different city. But I'm really tired of running. I just want to raise our son peacefully, without constantly looking over my shoulder. The only silver lining in all of this is that it has finally made my parents realize how serious the situation is. They've ceased pressuring me to reconcile with folks who have betrayed my trust. My father even volunteered to assist us with the relocation if we decided it was necessary. I keep thinking about Dylan's diary entry in which he claimed to be sparing our son from a falsehood. It frightens me to think of what could have occurred if he hadn't died that night. Would he have attempted to break into our home? Would he have harmed Ethan or me to get to the baby? I will never know. And perhaps that is for the best. For the time being, we are sticking out while remaining watchful. The security system provides us some peace of mind, and I've begun seeing a therapist to help me cope with the trauma of the past 3 years. Some days are more difficult than others, but I refuse to allow Dylan's illness and obsession steal any more of my happiness. I just never anticipated that, even in death, he'd find methods to scare me. Update 4. I honestly didn't expect to write another post, but the last few weeks have been completely chaotic, and I need to get it all out. Just when I hoped Dylan's death would provide some closure, things have gotten much more confusing. It began about a month ago, when I received a Facebook message from a woman named Hannah, whom I did not recognize. Her profile appeared legitimate, and she claimed to have been Dylan's girlfriend for the past 8 months, up to his death. My first thought was that this was a terrible joke or another illusion from someone in Dylan's circle. But something about her statement felt unusual. She was neither furious nor accusatory. She just appeared bewildered and hurt. Hannah explained that she spotted my name in Dylan's phone and wanted to know more about their relationship. Dylan had informed her that he was entirely unmarried, and that his ex-girlfriend, me, had moved away years ago, and they had lost contact completely. He hadn't mentioned the baby, the stalking, or anything. To her, they were in a committed relationship and were discussing moving in together. I was skeptical, but curiosity got the best of me. We decided to meet for coffee in a public space. When I saw Hannah, I immediately understood why Dylan was obsessed. She looked eerily similar to me, the same height, hair color, and even style. It was weird, like staring at a different version of myself. Hannah showed me hundreds of text messages from her and Dylan, including love notes, future plans, and images of them together appearing really pleased. But here's the truly disturbing part. The timestamps revealed that some of their most amorous talks occurred on the same days he was following me and Ethan. On the day he took those images of me with the stroller, he texted Hannah that he couldn't wait to have children with her someday. She had no notion about his mental health problems. Dylan had supposedly been extremely skilled at concealing his episodes from her, finding excuses whenever he disappeared for hospital stays. She assumed he was going on business travels or visiting ailing relatives. She had planned to invite him over for dinner on the night he died. She'd been phoning and messaging, worried sick, until his sister called her a few days later to explain what had occurred. But this is where things get very weird. Hannah claimed that, about 2 months before Dylan died, he began acting strangely about her job. She works at a daycare center, and Dylan began asking a lot of questions about security protocols, daily routines, and which children belong to which families. She assumed he was simply expressing interest in her profession, perhaps thinking about their own future family. Now that I know what was in that journal, I'm afraid of what he was preparing. After seeing Hannah, I couldn't stop thinking about how little we knew about Dylan's final months. So I did something stupid. I phoned his sister, Olivia, and asked if we could look over some more of his items together. I needed to know the entire breadth of what we were dealing with. Olivia was apprehensive at first, but she acknowledged having similar questions. We met at Dylan's previous apartment, which his family hadn't completely cleaned up yet. What we discovered made the photo collection seem mild in comparison. We found another box behind his bedroom dresser. This one included detailed maps of our area, Ethan's office, and my parents' house. There were printed Google Earth printouts with routes highlighted in red marker, notes on nearby security cameras, and times when specific sites were busiest or least busy. However, the most terrifying revelation was a folder labeled Emergency Plans. Dylan had drawn out various scenarios as if he were planning a mission. Plan A. Convince Lauren to meet privately. Plan B. Approach mutual friends. Plan C creates a crisis that requires Lauren's assistance. Finally, at the bottom of the pile. Plan D. Direct action required. Under Plan D, he'd written pages on the layout of our house, our daily schedule, and most disturbingly, comprehensive notes about our baby's sleeping patterns, feeding times, and which room he slept in. Dylan had been watching us closely enough to know when our son slept and when he was most likely alone in his cot. Olivia was sobbing by the time we were done going over everything. She kept apologizing, claiming she never realized it would be so horrible. But then she said something that altered everything. Dylan made a phone call the night he died, just before driving his mother's automobile. The phone record stated that it lasted 17 minutes. Olivia figured he contacted a crisis line, or Hannah, but she never checked to see who it was. When we checked through his call log that day, I recognized the number right away. It was Maya. When I confronted my brother about this, he turned white as a sheet. He confirmed that Maya had received a call that night, but she assured him it was the wrong number. She stated an insane individual called, ranting about needing help, and she swiftly hung up. My brother thought nothing of it at the time, but now I'm wondering what if Dylan had phoned Maya with a final plan. What if she knew more about what he planned to do that night than she let on? The timing is quite convenient. Dylan calls Maya. 17 minutes later, he steals the automobile, causes the accident, and commits suicide, hours later. I made a decision that Ethan first disagreed with. I went out to Maya immediately. I needed to know what Dylan had told her that night. She was hesitant to meet, but I pressed the matter, and she eventually consented to speak on the phone. What she said left me stunned. Dylan had contacted her in a great panic, claiming he had botched everything up and needed her assistance with something critical. He begged her to meet him somewhere private because he needed to return something that belonged to me. Maya explained that she had refused to advise him to leave it with his family, or ship it to me. Dylan had gotten agitated and began ranting about how everyone was against him, and how no one understood what he was trying to do. But this is the part that haunts me. Maya claimed that shortly before hanging up, Dylan muttered something like, "If I can't make this right, I'll make sure no one else gets hurt because of me." At the time she assumed it was simply more of his usual dramatic ranting. But now that we know more about Dylan's ambitions, I believe he knew that night that he would never be able to carry them out. Perhaps the automobile crash jolted him out of his fantasies long enough to realize how far gone he was. Maybe his death was more than simply a psychotic break. Perhaps it was the only method he could think of to save himself from doing something worse. I'm not sure if I will ever have all the answers. Hannah has been instrumental in filling in some blanks, and she has even become an unexpected source of support for someone else whose life has been radically upended by Dylan's illness. We've been chatting on a daily basis, and it's unusual but comfortable to talk to someone who cared about him, even if neither of us had any idea who he'd become in the end. The security system is still active, and Ethan and I have opted to remain in our home. Running away will not change what has happened, and to be honest, I'm tired of allowing Dylan's ghost to influence our judgments. Our son is prospering, ignorant to the drama that surrounds his early months, and I want to keep it that way. The therapy is helping, although some days are more difficult than others. I still check the locks obsessively, and my pulse races when I notice odd automobiles in our area. But I'm learning to live with my anxiety, rather than allowing it to consume me. My brother and I are steadily restoring our friendship. He has been exceedingly tolerant with my trust difficulties, and seeing him with our son and watching him be such a dedicated uncle reminds me why I don't want to lose him either. Maya is now entirely out of the picture, and I believe he is relieved to be free of all the drama. I sometimes wonder what might have happened if Dylan had sought assistance sooner, if someone had seen how terrible his delusions were becoming. However, I have learned that you cannot save someone who does not want to be saved, and attempting to do so may ruin you in the process. For the time being, I'm focused on the future, on raising our boy in a safe, loving atmosphere and creating the calm life that Ethan and I envisioned before all of this madness began. Dylan has already taken so much from us. I'm not going to allow him to take away our pleasure. My family tried to marry me off at 14. When I ran, they called me sick, erased my name, and tried to destroy everything I built. My mother stitched my wedding dress while the marks on my back were still fresh. I was 14. The groom, 52. She hummed softly as the needle moved through the red fabric, her fingers gliding over the gold embroidery like she was working on something sacred. She didn't even flinch at the bruises. That morning, I dropped a glass while pouring tea. They said I was clumsy, disrespectful. I got 10 lashes. No questions asked. In our house, pain wasn't punishment. It was preparation. And silence? That was survival. You didn't speak unless spoken to. You didn't eat until every man had finished. You didn't question why someone older than your father wanted to know your height or if your hips looked childbearing enough. And you never ever asked where the other girls went. I won't say my name yet. And the city I lived in? It was here, in America. That's the part people never believe. We weren't in a village. We lived in a suburban neighborhood with trimmed lawns and friendly neighbors. My parents owned a business. Smiled at school events. Said have a good one, to the mailman. No one ever looked beyond the front door. Inside, it was a different world. A world where obedience was love, modesty was survival, and your value depended on how well you followed the script. I remember the day my cousin Rima got her first period. There was a celebration, sweet desserts, henna, gold bangles. She was 12. That night she was promised to a man who ran a trucking company in Texas. He was almost 50. His previous wife had fallen ill after her third child. Rima didn't cry out loud, just one single tear down her cheek before her mother leaned over and whispered, "Smile. You're lucky." That night I didn't sleep. By then I had already started what I called my slow disappearing. I cut out sugar, avoid rice, took tiny bites, always under supervision. I flushed food down the toilet, hid it in napkins. The thinner girls were always the last to develop. That was my theory. No weight gain, no blood, no wedding. It worked. For a while. While other girls were getting fitted for bridal bangles, I was still flat and pale. My collarbones stuck out. My clothes hung off me. The aunties started whispering. Is she sick? Maybe something's wrong. One even asked if I was cursed. But I didn't care. Every month without blood was a small victory. A quiet act of rebellion no one could see. Still, they didn't stop training me. Every Friday, from 1 a.m. until sunrise, I was required to cook and serve meals for the male relatives. No sitting, no talking, no mistakes. If I made a noise or looked someone in the eye, I was punished. Not with yelling. That would have been too easy. My hands were made to hold hot metal pots without gloves. My arms bore the sting of cooking oil. My feet ached from hours of standing. And every night my mother rubbed brightening cream onto my face. To help you look more desirable, she'd whisper. The smell made me gag, something between fake lemon and chemicals. But I said nothing. I never said anything. I played my role perfectly. I smiled. I told everyone I wanted children. I praised our traditions. I acted proud to follow in the footsteps of the women before me. But deep down, I was taking notes. Quietly, carefully. Watching who disappeared and who came back looking different. I started keeping track. Names, ages, strange stories, warnings whispered between girls in the hallway at family gatherings. I hid my notebook under a floorboard. Wrapped it in a scarf. Wrote everything in code, just in case. Because I wasn't just trying to save myself anymore. I was preparing for something bigger. But I was still a girl. A girl in a house where every wall had ears, and every act of defiance was a stain on family pride. Still, even in the middle of all that, I clung to hope. Because while they waited for one kind of bleeding, I was still holding on to a different kind of survival. Not yet, I whispered to myself. Not yet. The first time I questioned everything, it was because of a t-shirt. Just a regular, oversized school t-shirt I forgot I had in my gym bag. I wore it to school by accident one Monday. Nothing tight, nothing cropped, just casual, but apparently too revealing by my family's standards. That afternoon, I was called into a private meeting with my science teacher, Ms. Rodriguez. She said it was about a missed assignment. But the moment I stepped in, she gently closed the door and stared at me. Really stared. Her eyes dropped to my arms, which were covered in long sleeves even though it was nearly 90 degrees outside. She asked if I was okay. If I was eating enough. If everything at home was all right. I nodded, smiled, lied. Just tired, miss. She didn't press. Just excused herself to use the restroom, left the room for no more than 5 minutes. But she made a mistake. Or maybe it wasn't a mistake at all. She didn't lock her drawer. While waiting, I noticed it had slid open slightly. Inside were papers, not schoolwork, but pamphlets. Titles like Your Rights as a Teen, When Culture Crosses the Line, and Marriage Laws, No Exceptions, No Excuses. I didn't mean to grab one, but something in me, something quiet and terrified, reached out. I slipped the thinnest pamphlet into my waistband, right under the elastic of my skirt. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure someone would hear it. When she returned, I was already seated again, acting as if nothing had happened. That night I locked myself in the bathroom, turned on the faucet so no one would hear, and read. And for the first time in my life, I felt like the world tilted. Because everything I'd been taught, everything I thought was just how it is, was illegal. Not just frowned upon. Not just different from other families. Criminal. Child marriage, illegal. Forced marriage, illegal. Controlling what a minor wears, eats, or who they marry. Abuse. There were no cultural exceptions, no religious loopholes. And the most shocking part: teachers, doctors, counselors, they were legally required to report it if they suspected it. I stayed up all night memorizing the hotline numbers. I wrote down the addresses of shelters. I practiced whispering the exact words that would trigger a legal investigation. I'm not safe. They're planning a marriage I don't want. I'm a minor. Please help. Over the next few weeks I began moving differently. Still obedient, still quiet, but sharper, watching, listening. I noticed which cousins hadn't bled yet, which girls were still allowed to go to school, which teachers might believe them. I started passing small notes, not obvious, just hints, asking if anyone else felt like this wasn't okay. That's how it began. In my uncle's dusty backyard shed. 6 girls. Ages 10 to 13. All cousins. All scared. We pretended it was wife training, like we were expected to do. That way no one would question why we were whispering and writing. But what we were really doing was learning how to leave. I taught them what I knew, what words to say, who to trust. We practiced in low voices. We wrote scripts. We rehearsed until they could say them without crying. I'm 13. They want me to marry. Please. I don't want this. We knew we were being watched, that we couldn't stop what had already happened to our sisters and cousins. But maybe, just maybe, we could stop it from happening again. I started building what I called the notebook. Inside, shelter addresses, emergency numbers, school names of teachers I believed could be trusted. Even meal schedules, times of the day when it was easier to sneak out unnoticed. I made copies, hid them in cereal boxes, behind toilet tanks, even inside folded pillowcases at relatives' homes. But it still didn't feel like enough. Because no matter how much we prepared, there was one thing we couldn't stop: biology. And the day my body finally betrayed me, I was cutting onions at 6:40 a.m. I looked down and saw red seeping through the white cotton of my dress. For a second I thought I'd cut myself. But then my stomach dropped. Number: not now. Not yet. Not this way. I stood frozen, hand clenched around the knife. Then my mother's scream rang through the kitchen, not in fear, but joy. She's ready. Within minutes, every woman in the house was hugging me, crying, smiling, praising God. By nightfall my father had already chosen my groom. He didn't ask me, he didn't need to. Because in our family blood wasn't just biology, it was a contract. The man's name was Khalid, 52, owned several construction crews across 3 states, widowed twice, no children with either wife. At least that's what the family said. But the whispers told a different story. About complications, about too many pregnancies too young, about kidneys that failed before 23. My father called it a blessing. My mother called it destiny. I called it a countdown. The wedding was scheduled for 2 weeks later. It didn't matter that I said nothing. Silence was taken as consent. And when I did try to protest, just once, my mother leaned in close and said something I'll never forget. You're not a child anymore. The time for dreams is over. That night I passed my notebook to Anna, one of the girls from our shed. She had just gotten her period too, just 3 days after me. Her eyes were wide with fear as her engagement was announced at dinner. Her groom was 51, he had children older than her, one of them had a child of their own. While the men laughed and toasted, Anna just stared at the wall. After dinner, I slipped her the notebook under the table. Memorize it, I whispered. Give it to your science teacher tomorrow. Use the exact words, don't change anything. What about you? She asked. My wedding's not for 2 weeks. I'll figure something out. I didn't. Because the next night, there was a knock on the door. It was CPS. 3 agents. Stern but calm. They asked to speak with Anna. Asked questions about early engagements. Cultural expectations. The conversation was short, but I saw my father's face shift from polite to furious in less than a minute. The moment the door closed behind them, it started. The questions, the shouting, the searching. They tore the house apart looking for the source. Someone had poisoned the girls, filled their heads with Western lies. They pulled apart cushions, ripped open books, dumped out drawers. My uncle found the shed first, and the burned copy of my original notes I thought I'd hidden well. My father called me into the living room. Everyone was there, aunts, uncles, cousins, my parents. He held the notebook up like a sin. This filth came from you, didn't it? I didn't answer. I didn't have to. He burned it in front of me. Called me cursed, a stain, a disease. And then he said the words I'd feared for years. The wedding is tomorrow morning. No more chances to ruin this family. I didn't sleep that night. I just packed. Silently. A plastic bag, hidden beneath my mattress. 1 change of clothes, 2 granola bars, a page with shelter addresses, and $20 stolen over months. 1 crumpled dollar at a time. At sunrise the door opened. My mother, already dressed in gold and red, came in holding a veil. Get up, she said flatly. The beautician will be here in 30 minutes. I clutched my stomach. Something's wrong, I whispered. My stomach. It hurts. She narrowed her eyes. You went to the bathroom 20 minutes ago. Please, I begged. It hurts. I think I'm sick. In our culture, a sick bride was a bad omen. She frowned. Annoyed, but cautious. 5 minutes, she said. Then you'll get dressed. I rushed to the bathroom, locked the door behind me and climbed onto the toilet seat. From there I reached up into the ceiling tile I'd loosened days before and pulled out my hidden bag. Then I actually flushed the toilet, just for effect. Ran the faucet. Moaned dramatically. Pounded the wall once. Mama, I can't stop, my stomach, it's so bad. Open the door, she shouted. I can't. She called for my father. Footsteps. Voices. Fists pounding the door. I climbed back onto the toilet and looked at the tiny window above it. It had been painted shut years ago, but I'd worked on it. 1 layer at a time with a stolen butter knife. I pushed. The paint cracked. Gave way. Outside, morning light, wet grass, freedom. I shoved my bag through first. Then my shoulders. Then I got stuck. My hips wouldn't go through. Not easily. I bit my lip. Twisted. Pushed. Behind me I heard the lock splintering. 1 final shove, and I was through. I dropped 6 feet into a muddy patch of lawn. My ankle twisted, but it didn't snap. Behind me, the window burst open and I heard shouting. I ran, barefoot, nightgown clinging to my legs, hair loose, bag clutched tight. I ran through backyards, dodging barking dogs, slipping on dew-covered grass. I ducked behind trash bins as cars pulled out of driveways. They were searching for me already. Check every street. She couldn't have gone far. I cut through the Hassan's yard, past the Mahmoud's porch, through the alley behind the grocery store. I recognized Omar's voice behind me. Then Kareem's. They had cars. I had bloodied feet and 1 broken sandal. But I knew the route, 4 blocks, 1 bus stop. That's all I needed. I reached the bus just as it arrived. The driver, an older woman with kind eyes, looked at me once and opened the door. Please, I whispered. I need to get downtown. I'll pay you back, I swear. I had left the $20 in the ceiling in my rush. The woman in the first row stood silently and tapped in exact change. Sit down, baby, she said softly. I collapsed into the seat next to her, still shaking. Outside, Omar's car came screeching into the lot. I ducked. The woman shifted to block me from view. Don't worry, she whispered. You're safe now. We rode in silence for 30 blocks. When we reached the courthouse, she helped me off the bus. Slipped a $10 bill into my hand. Said nothing else. I stepped inside, feet bleeding, clothes soaked, still clutching my bag like it was my only anchor. I need a protective order, I told the clerk. Please, I'm 15. They're making me get married. Today. She looked at me for one long second, then stood and came around the counter. "You're in the right place, sweetheart," she said. "Let's get you safe." They didn't waste time. Within 24 hours of my emergency protective order, the retaliation began. The first wave came quietly, voicemails from numbers I didn't recognize. Some were my cousins, crying. Others were my uncles, calm and soft-spoken, urging me to come home before things got worse. By the third day, it turned public. A post appeared on my father's Facebook. My school photo. Full name. A desperate message in English and our native language. "Our daughter is missing. She is unwell and was taken by people filling her head with lies. She is not safe. Please help us bring her home." The post was shared over 400 times within a few hours. Aunts and uncles reposted it. Friends from the community commented with crying emojis, prayers and promises to keep watch. But the part that made my stomach twist? They claimed I had a mental disorder. Said I'd stopped taking medication. That I believed impossible things. That I was easily manipulated. A danger to myself. They used the same words they always used when a girl stepped out of line: confused, sick, delusional. I shut my phone off, but it wasn't enough. The next morning, the woman running my temporary shelter, Theodora, woke me early. Her face was pale. She showed me the security feed. A man was parked across the street in an unfamiliar sedan. He'd been there since 4 a.m., just sitting with the engine running. When the police arrived, the car was gone, but the message was clear. "We know where you are." That afternoon I received a delivery, no return address. A bouquet of lilies. A card that read, "Our hearts are broken. Please forgive us. Love, Mama." Theodora took photos before disposing of them. "Document everything," she reminded me. "Even guilt can be a weapon." The next day, it wasn't flowers. It was videos. I found them online by accident, or maybe not by accident. One of the girls from my old wife skills group, my younger cousin Margie, had posted a video with her mother sitting beside her. "She said terrible things about our family," Margie said, eyes blank. "She told us we'd be sold. That our parents didn't love us. She scared us." I could tell it was rehearsed. The camera too steady, the lines too clean. Her mother nodded at each word, a tight smile on her face. They had turned her against me. Or more likely, scared her into submission. I wanted to scream, to reply, to explain. But Theodora placed a hand on my shoulder. "Don't engage. That's what they want." Instead we called Patricia, my new legal aid lawyer. She was fierce, fast-talking and didn't flinch at the storm we were in. "Classic narrative flip," she said. "They can't get you physically, so now they'll try to erase your credibility." We began gathering responses. Teachers, school counselors, people who had quietly noticed something was wrong for years but didn't know how to name it. Still, the pressure grew. Anonymous accounts messaged me. My face, edited to look wild-eyed and unwell, started appearing in community WhatsApp groups with captions like, "Help this girl before it's too late." But the worst came on Friday. Theodora's neighbor, Mr. Ellis, knocked on the door. He held out his phone, showing us pictures he'd taken just minutes earlier. "3 men were photographing your house from across the street," he said. One of them was pointing. I couldn't breathe. "Maybe it's time we relocate," Margaret, my CPS caseworker, suggested that evening. "If we move every time they try to scare us," Theodora snapped, "they win." But deep down, I knew this place wasn't safe anymore. That night I slept fully dressed, shoes by the door, bag packed, heart pounding. At 2:43 a.m., the backyard motion sensor lit up. Theodora and I watched in silence from the security monitor as 2 shadows moved past the garden. One paused at the side window. The other tried the back door. The police took 11 minutes to arrive. By then, the men were gone. But they'd left behind muddy footprints and a folded note taped to the gate. In our native language it said, "This isn't over." By Sunday I wasn't just hiding, I was fighting back. I called Ms. Rodriguez, the teacher who'd accidentally introduced me to the idea that I had rights. "Remember those pamphlets?" I asked. "We need more. A lot more." We met at a neutral location, a quiet public library 2 towns away. She brought boxes of supplies, notebooks, printouts, folders. I brought the notebook, rewritten, updated, streamlined. We disguised the information. Emergency numbers written as equations. Shelter addresses inside fake permission slips. Legal definitions hidden between history notes. "We'll distribute them through school nurses," she said. "They're mandatory reporters. They'll know who to watch. Within 48 hours we had made 30 packets. By Thursday, 50. Each one slipped quietly into the hands of girls who needed them. Some were thrown away, others hidden, but a few reached their destination. We knew it was working when my new phone, with a number shared only with Theodora and Ms. Rodriguez, rang from a blocked caller. The voice was soft. Young. "We found your notebook," she said. "There are 6 of us. Can you help?" I grabbed a pen. "Tell me everything." By the end of that week, I had names. 6 girls. Ages 12 to 16. 3 already engaged. 1 set to leave the country within days. They'd been practicing in secret, passing around the copied pages from my notebook, whispering hotline numbers during lunch, memorizing how to file an emergency order without alerting their parents. But fear hung over every word. What if they find out? What if they check our phones? What if we get caught? I knew exactly what they meant. "Then you try again," I told the girl who'd called. "And again. Until you're free." The backlash was immediate. My father's lawyer filed a motion to pursue criminal charges against me, a minor, for corrupting other minors, recruiting vulnerable girls into dangerous anti-family ideology, and interfering with cultural preservation. It was all nonsense. It wouldn't stick. But Patricia, my lawyer, knew what they were doing. "They're testing you," she said, "trying to scare you into backing down. If we panic, we lose control of the narrative." We doubled down. Ms. Rodriguez contacted a journalist she trusted, someone who had covered trafficking, forced marriage, and silent abuse happening behind suburban doors. "We won't use your real name," the journalist promised. "No face, no location, just your story. But people need to know this is happening, here, in this country." While the article was in production, we built what we called the Freedom Network, a real one. Not just notes and whispers anymore. Theodora secured a private P.O. box, Ms. Rodriguez coordinated with sympathetic nurses and counselors, Patricia drafted legal info sheets disguised as class syllabi, and I started translating the most important pages into other languages, because the girls finding us weren't just from my background anymore. Every night we filled backpacks with hidden guides, folded them into textbooks, left them in library stacks, behind vending machines, tucked into bathroom stalls in schools with high immigrant populations. Every time we got word that one more girl reached out to a trusted adult, it felt like a small explosion of hope. Then came the burn. Saturday morning. Theodora's security monitor blinked red. A car, unfamiliar, tinted, pulled into the parking lot behind our apartment complex. It didn't park in a real spot. Just stopped. 5 minutes later, it was in flames. We watched from the window as fire consumed the vehicle, black smoke curling into the morning sky. Firefighters arrived quickly. Too quickly. As if someone had wanted the response. Wanted the drama. Inside the trunk they found something charred but unmistakable. Dolls, dressed in miniature wedding dresses, melted, twisted, blackened. The message was crystal clear. You think you're saving them? Watch them burn. That night Margaret came with a quiet, heavy voice. We're moving you. Again. This place is compromised. But I shook my head. No, I said. That's what they want. For me to stay scared, silent, hidden. After hours of arguing, we compromised. I'd stay, but with upgraded security. Panic buttons in every room. 2 retired officers rotating shifts. Emergency phone line rerouted to bypass local interference. No sleeping in the same room 2 nights in a row. I wasn't running anymore, not from smoke, not from fear. 2 days later, we got our proof that the information was working. A new girl arrived. 14. Silent. Shaking. She came from a different family but a nearly identical background. When Margaret asked how she found us, she simply whispered, "The notebook. Hidden in my cousin's room. With the math problems." That notebook had traveled through hands I'd never touched, hallways I'd never walked, and it had saved someone I'd never met. I stayed with her that first night, explaining what would happen next. What she could expect. What her rights were. Her fear slowly cracked into something else. Not joy, not yet, but something sharper. Determination. Then the call came. A girl I hadn't spoken to in months. Anna. Her voice was hoarse, tired. They made me come back, she said. Said they'd hurt my little sister if I didn't. I closed my eyes. My chest ached. Anna. I'm sorry. I couldn't protect her. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Listen. They're planning something. Not about bringing you home. They've given up on that. They want to make an example. So others won't follow you. I froze. What kind of example? I don't know. But I heard them mention your new school. Something about a message everyone would understand. My blood ran cold. We changed everything overnight. I stopped attending school in person, alternated safe houses, used decoy accounts, moved like smoke, but it wasn't enough. Wednesday morning at 5:52 a.m. the alarm went off. Not the perimeter, the bedroom window. Bathroom. Now. Theodora ordered, pushing me through the hallway as her phone dialed 911. Behind me, glass shattering. Male voices. Not my father or uncles. They wouldn't risk it. These were others. Extended family. Hired hands. I locked the bathroom door, backed away. They pounded from the other side. We just want to talk. Don't make this worse. Your family still loves you. I gripped the can of hairspray I'd hidden under the sink. It was all I had. The pounding grew louder. Then, sirens. Close. Blazing. The pounding stopped. Footsteps. Doors slamming. Silence. Police found muddy footprints. Partial fingerprints. Nothing solid. But we knew what it meant. They had crossed the line. And now. It was war. The courtroom felt colder than I expected. Not in temperature, but in the way everyone looked at me when I walked in. Like I was the one on trial. Like I was the shame they had to witness. My entire extended family filled the left side of the room. Aunts in embroidered shawls. Uncles in tailored suits. Cousins dressed like it was a celebration. My parents sat in the front row. My father's hands folded. Calm. Confident. My mother, dabbing tears she hadn't cried, eyes fixed on me like I was something rotting. I didn't look at them. I looked at Patricia. She sat beside me, upright, composed, furious in her stillness. Breathe. She whispered. We've got the truth. That's more than they have. The hearing was for a permanent protective order. If we won, my family would be banned from contacting me. Forever. If we lost, they could try again. This time, legally. The other side began first. My father's lawyer painted a familiar picture. A loving family. A confused teenager. Cultural misunderstanding. Outsiders twisting her perception. They called character witnesses. Family friends, our local imam, even my pediatrician. He said I'd never shown signs of abuse. Of course not. I'd never been allowed to speak alone during appointments. My mother always answered for me. Patricia leaned in. We'll address that. Don't worry. Then it was our turn. Patricia stood, calm and measured. She presented photos of my injuries, hands with old burns, the scars on my back, security footage, of my father arriving with fake prescription bottles after the escape. The essays, ones Ms. Rodriguez had saved, each paragraph hiding the truth between the lines. Then she called Ms. Rodriguez to the stand. She took a deep breath before speaking, eyes scanning the room before settling on me. She spoke of signs she'd noticed, extreme weight loss, fearful behavior, essays that didn't match my age, full of veiled references to duty, purification, serving with silence. The cross-examination was brutal. Why didn't you report earlier? The lawyer demanded. I was trying to build trust, she said. I wanted her to feel safe. So you admit you broke mandatory reporting laws? Patricia stood instantly. Objection. Counsel is misrepresenting the law. Still, the damage was done. They were painting her as the manipulator. The outsider who'd planted these ideas in my head. When it was my turn, I felt my legs tremble as I stood. But I made it to the stand. Patricia guided me gently. She didn't ask me to relive every punishment. Just the facts. Tell us how you were prepared for marriage. Describe what training meant in your home. Who chose your fiancé? Were you consulted? I answered clearly. Quietly, not crying, not shouting, just the truth. The opposing. Lawyer tried to twist it. You didn't bleed until you were 15. Isn't it true you manipulated your body to delay it? Yes, I said calmly. Because I knew what came after. His eyes narrowed. You think being married is worse than disobeying your family? No, I replied. I think losing my freedom, my voice, is worse than their disappointment. He tried again. Are you accusing your parents of abuse? I'm stating facts, I said. They can call it culture, I call it control. The judge asked a final question. Do you believe you're in danger if contact is allowed? Yes, I said. Not just physical, psychological, emotional, and not just to me, to the girls I'm trying to help. There was silence as I stepped down. Then the doors opened. A woman entered. Mid-20s, slim, nervous. She wore a long coat and walked with a limp. Behind her was a CPS supervisor. Your Honor, the supervisor said. This witness has relevant information. The court paused. The judge motioned her forward. She took the stand. Spoke slowly. My name is Fatima Habib. I was Khalid's first wife. Gasps filled the courtroom. My father's expression shattered. They said you were, one of my aunts whispered. Dead? Fatima said, voice steady now. That's what my family told people. That I died after complications. But I didn't. I escaped. She continued. I was married at 15. By 20, I had 4 pregnancies. My kidneys began failing. When I couldn't carry again, he punished me. When I collapsed in the kitchen, a nurse helped me get away. I've been in hiding for 5 years. She looked directly at me. When I saw the Facebook post about you, I knew I had to speak. She presented medical records, hospital logs, even a photo of the fake grave her family had created for her. It was irrefutable. The courtroom was frozen. Even the opposing lawyer struggled to speak. The judge looked stunned. Then came the ruling. This court finds credible and substantial evidence of coercion, cultural manipulation, and emotional abuse. The protective order is hereby made permanent. Any future contact, physical or digital, will result in criminal charges. My father stood, rage boiling beneath his skin. You are no daughter of mine, he hissed, in Arabic. Sit down, the judge warned. My mother stood too. Calm. I thought for one moment she might come toward me. Instead, she removed her scarf slowly, folded it into her lap. We have no daughter, she said aloud. She died today. They walked out. No backward glance, no hesitation. As I stood in the hallway afterward, shaking with adrenaline, Fatima approached. We didn't speak. She just hugged me. And in that moment, 2 girls the world had tried to erase stood together, visible, undeniable, alive. They erased me. Not metaphorically. Literally. Monday morning, a formal notice was published in the community newsletter, written in ornate calligraphy and sealed with the family crest. She who was once our daughter, our niece, our cousin, is no longer among us. Her name is to be removed from all records. No contact is permitted, no mention allowed. Anyone who speaks to her shall share her fate. My name was deleted from family trees. My photos removed from living rooms. Text threads purged, invitations rescinded. They didn't just want to disown me. They wanted to erase my existence, as if I had never breathed their air. To them, this was worse than death, it was disappearance. But to me, it was relief. They had played their final card, and I was still standing. By Tuesday something shifted. Girls who had been watching from the shadows, afraid to speak, began reaching out. I saw what they did to you, and you're still here. If you can do it, maybe I can too. Can I get one of the notebooks? 3 emergency orders were filed that day. 2 girls made it safely to shelters. One was caught trying to leave, but had memorized the emergency phrases. Her school counselor filed the report before the family could relocate her. Wednesday, we held our first official Freedom Network meeting. 15 volunteers, teachers, nurses, retired legal professionals, and girls who had escaped like me. We mapped out everything. How to disguise legal info inside schoolwork. Which schools had trusted counselors? Which districts had been historically slow to act? Which shelters had room for cultural-specific placement? We created tiers of emergency response. Red folders, girls in immediate danger. Yellow, suspected grooming. Green, watching, waiting, maybe still deciding. Theodora kept the master ledger in a locked file. Patricia ensured we were protected legally. Ms. Rodriguez coordinated the distribution. And I? I answered the calls. Thursday we got our first coordinated rescue. A girl, 13, barely in middle school, was set to be removed from the country within 24 hours. We tracked the van, notified the authorities, got her to the courthouse just in time. Her statement was whispered through tears, but it held. I don't want to go. I want to stay. Please. I'm scared. The order was granted. She was placed within hours. That night, she looked at me across a hospital waiting room and said, I didn't think I had a choice until I read your words. I didn't know what to say. So I just nodded and whispered, now you do. Friday morning I received a package, no return address, postmarked from another state. Inside, a photo of a woman in scrubs, smiling proudly. A nursing school diploma. A handwritten note. I wanted you to see what's possible. 5 years hiding. But now I help people. I have a life. A name. I fell in love with someone who sees me for who I am, not what I was trained to be. Stay strong. Fatima. I cried holding that photo. Not because of the pain, but because I could finally see the other side. Saturday. The article dropped. The underground network helping girls escape forced marriage, inside a hidden fight for freedom. No names, no faces, just stories. Mine, Fatima's, Anna's. The response was instant. Organizations reached out. Donors offered to help print more materials. Counselors asked how they could get involved. But the best message came from an unknown number. 12 girls, 3 states. We've copied the notebooks. We're distributing them too. You started something. I stared at the text, hands shaking. 12 girls. 12 me's. Sunday was quiet. Which by then, felt like a warning. And sure enough, Monday morning, the counterattack resumed. My father's lawyer called a press conference. On the courthouse steps, in full view of cameras, he declared, "This is not a case of abuse. This is a case of cultural erasure. A vulnerable girl manipulated by outsiders into destroying her own family. She is spreading misinformation. She is endangering other families." Behind him stood community leaders, nodding solemnly. It was theater. But dangerous theater. Because it planted seeds of doubt. And then came the betrayal. Another video surfaced. This time, Margie and 4 other girls from the Wife Skills group. Sitting side by side, faces blank, voices monotone. She lied to us. She said our parents were monsters. She made us think marriage was a cage. I could see it in their eyes, the fear, the pressure. They didn't believe what they were saying. But they had to say it. Theodora reached to shut the screen. Don't watch. But I did, all of it. Because I needed to remember why we fight. Tuesday I went back to court. This time, not for me, but to support Samira, one of the 6 girls from that first notebook call. She stood in front of the judge, fists clenched, voice steady. I'm not property. I'm not a gift to be exchanged. I'm a person, and I have rights. The protective order was granted. Outside I hugged her. She whispered, "Your notebook saved me." Wednesday, we hosted a virtual town hall, our first public event. We blurred faces, changed names, but told stories. Girls logged in from across the country. Some just listened. Others typed in the chat. This happened to me. I thought I was the only one. How do I escape? We built a directory that night. Mapped safe houses, assigned response volunteers. The Freedom Network wasn't just real. It was growing. And then came the last message I'll share with you. A girl, 11 years old, sent through a borrowed school tablet. I found one of your notebooks. I can't talk out loud, but I wrote the phone number on my hand. If they find it, I'll say it's for math class. Please don't forget about us. I won't. I never will. Because they tried to erase me. But instead, they created a blueprint, a network, a warning, a war cry. The battle isn't over. But the silence is. And every girl who speaks now, she doesn't speak alone. My sister dumped her kids on my doorstep without warning, then threatened to ruin my career when I refused to cover for her. I was halfway through brushing my teeth when the doorbell rang. It was a Saturday morning, 8:07 a.m. I know that because I glanced at the oven clock as I walked toward the door in my pajamas, foam still in my mouth. I opened it and froze. 2 little boys stood in front of me. No jackets. No bags. Just a crumpled note duct taped to the older one's shirt that read, in my sister's handwriting. "They'll be fine with you, don't call me." I looked around. No car in sight, no text, no missed call. Just 2 kids standing on my porch like forgotten packages. I hadn't seen my sister in 7 months. We hadn't spoken in longer. The last time we were in the same room, she threw a drink at my face during Thanksgiving dinner because I had stolen all the attention again, by mentioning my new job. And now she'd dropped her kids on my doorstep like stray dogs. The older boy, Michael, looked at me with eyes that were far too tired for a 10-year-old. The younger one, Ethan, just kept tugging at his sleeves like he wanted to disappear inside them. I opened the door wider. "Come in," I said quietly, stepping aside. They walked past me without a word. Michael clutched Ethan's hand like it was the only thing anchoring him to the earth. As I closed the door behind them, I felt something shift in the pit of my stomach. This wasn't a favor. This wasn't a mistake. This was abandonment. And I had a sick feeling deep down that this time, unlike all the others, my sister might not come back. Not in time, not intact, maybe not at all. Growing up, I was never the favorite. I wasn't even a close second. Hell, I wasn't even in the running. My mom only had room in her eyes for one star, my sister, Ava. She was the beautiful one. Thick blonde curls, dimples, green eyes. By the time she was 11, people were already saying she should model. My mom ate that up like it was gospel. And me? I was bookish. Quiet. Too intense. When I was 13, I walked in on my mom looking at old photos of Ava as a toddler, smiling to herself. She didn't hear me come in. I stood there for a few seconds too long and finally asked, "Do you have any pictures of me?" She blinked. Then said, "I think there's one of you at your second birthday. But you were crying." That was it. I used to tell myself it didn't matter. That love wasn't something you earned with looks. But the truth was, in our house, beauty equaled value, and I didn't have enough currency. Ava used to bully me in small venomous ways, taking my clothes, mocking my acne. Once she told a boy I liked that I smelled like boiled milk. But the worst came senior year. I was dating a guy named Liam. He wasn't perfect, a little awkward, but sweet. He liked that I read poetry and didn't mind that I didn't wear makeup. For a moment, I let myself believe I could be chosen. Then Ava slept with him. She told me afterward. On purpose, with a grin. "He said you're boring in bed, I just wanted to confirm it." When I told my parents, they shrugged. My dad muttered something about teenage hormones, and my mom, she just sighed and said, "Don't start drama." Ava didn't mean anything by it. I remember feeling my throat close up, like I was choking on a truth I was finally old enough to see. They were never on my side. But Ava was untouchable. No matter what she did. That night I cried so hard I made myself sick. And as I lay on the bathroom floor, forehead pressed to the cold tile, I made a decision. If I couldn't be beautiful, I would be unbreakable. I buried myself in school. Graduated valedictorian. Full ride to a top university. Six-figure job by the time I was 24. And not once, did my parents congratulate me. When I got promoted last year, my mom texted back a thumbs-up emoji. "Ava?" She messaged me. "Bet it's fake. Can't wait till you get fired, LOL." She always found a way to cut me, just deep enough. So when I saw her kids standing on my porch that morning, two quiet boys with hollow eyes and mismatched socks, I realized something that almost made me sick. She was doing to them what she did to me. And maybe, just maybe, I was the only one who could stop the cycle. The first night was quiet. Too quiet. Michael and Ethan barely spoke. They ate their dinner, grilled cheese and tomato soup, like they hadn't had a hot meal in days. They each said thank you so softly I almost didn't hear it. Afterwards, Michael insisted on doing the dishes. Ethan kept asking where the bathroom was, like he was afraid of going into the wrong room and being yelled at. They didn't act like guests, they acted like intruders. I made up the guest room for them. 2 beds, fresh sheets, even a nightlight I found in storage. I told them they could leave the door open. I promised I wouldn't lock them in. They just nodded. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling fan, wondering what the hell my sister was thinking. 8 weeks. That's what her note said. 8 weeks? I checked her socials. Nothing since last Wednesday. No posts. No stories. Her number went straight to voicemail. Even her trashy Facebook friends were unusually silent. I called my mom. Big mistake. She picked up with a sharp, "What?" I told her Ava had left the boys with me. That she hadn't answered her phone in 2 days. That I didn't know what the hell was going on. My mom just sighed. "They're your nephews, don't be dramatic." "I'm not being dramatic. I'm being responsible." "Don't start. Ava's under a lot of stress. She needed a break." "A break?" I nearly screamed. "She abandoned her children without telling anyone. That's not a break, that's negligence." There was a pause. Then she muttered, "She told me you'd react like this. Always making yourself the victim." That stung more than I'd like to admit. Even after everything, part of me still wanted her to say, "You're right. This is unacceptable. I'm proud of you for stepping up." But no. I got scolded for not being supportive. I hung up. Hard. The next morning I went through the boys' overnight bags. 1 pair of underwear each. 1 toothbrush for 2. No socks. No pajamas. Just a few crumpled shirts and jeans that were too small. One of Michael's shirts had a rip under the armpit, and Ethan's shoes had holes worn clean through the soles. There wasn't even a charger for the tablet they brought, which, by the way, had no parental controls and was loaded with videos I wouldn't let a grown man watch. It hit me then. This wasn't a vacation mistake. This was calculated neglect. Ava didn't forget. She didn't panic. She planned this. Later that day, I checked Facebook Marketplace on a hunch. Sure enough, I found posts from Ava's profile, days old, listing toddler shoes, used but clean, and boys' winter coats, sizes 5 to 8. She sold their stuff to fund her little adventure. I sat at the kitchen table shaking. She hadn't just dumped her kids on me, she had burned their bridge home. And I was the only thing left standing. She finally called me back on the third night. It was past 11 p.m., and I had just tucked the boys in. Ethan wanted to sleep holding my hand. Michael had a nightmare the night before. Something about falling out of a moving car. When I saw no caller ID flash on my screen, I just knew. I didn't even say hello. I picked up and hissed, "Where the hell are you?" A pause. Then her voice, slow, sultry, and full of venom. "Wow. That's how you greet your sister now? You left your children on my porch like garbage, Ava. What do you want me to say? Welcome back?" She laughed. It wasn't a real laugh. It was the kind of laugh that meant you're so far beneath me, it's almost funny. "I'm on a break. A well-deserved one," she said. "You're always playing the martyr, aren't you?" 8 weeks, Ava. 8. You didn't pack them clothes. No food. Nothing. I knew you'd take care of them. You didn't even ask me. And if I had, she said, voice flat now, you would have said no, like always. That's not the point. Actually it is, you've never done a single thing for me, not once, and now you get to finally repay the universe. Something in me cracked. You're insane, I spat. I'm calling CPS tomorrow morning. And the police. You're not getting away with this. Silence. Then her voice changed. Colder. Lower. Dangerous. You really want to play that game? She whispered. Because I can call your job. You know. Let them know about your little condition. My stomach flipped. You don't know anything about my job, I snapped. I know enough, she purred. I know your boss is on LinkedIn. I know your company has a strict fitness for duty clause. I know what bipolar disorder looks like on a report. My mouth went dry. You wouldn't? I would. And I will. All it takes is one anonymous email. A few old stories. That panic attack you had in college? The time you called me crying from the ER after forgetting your meds? Yeah, I remember all of it. I was shaking now. You'd risk your kids' well-being just to ruin me? They're not my problem anymore, she said plainly. They're your problem. My vision blurred with rage. I slammed the phone down and screamed into my palms. This wasn't just neglect. This wasn't irresponsibility. This was war. For 10 minutes I sat at the kitchen table, heart pounding, trying to breathe. I felt like I was about to throw up. Then I remembered something. Eric. I FaceTimed him. My boyfriend. 8,000 miles away in Australia. I hadn't told him anything yet because I didn't want to drag him into the mess. But the second he answered and saw my face, he sat up straight. What happened? And I broke. I told him everything. Every disgusting detail. From the kids on my doorstep to Ava's threats. I couldn't stop crying. My voice cracked halfway through and I had to pause just to catch my breath. He listened. He didn't interrupt once. Then he said something that changed everything. You need to get her on tape. What? You said she threatened to lie about your medical history to ruin your career. That's blackmail and abandonment. You need evidence. I don't want to talk to her again. You won't have to. Just once. Calmly. Lead her into saying it again. Record it. Then call CPS. And a lawyer. I hesitated. Then I nodded. Because I knew he was right. For the first time in years, I wasn't just reacting. I was preparing. I tested the recording app on my phone at least 15 times before I called her again. My hands were still trembling. I kept checking the settings, making sure it saved, making sure the microphone was working. I even Googled my state's consent laws for recording conversations. Thank God it was a one-party state. I waited until the boys were playing Mario Kart in the living room, controllers in hand, laughing, really laughing, for the first time since they arrived. I stepped into the bedroom, closed the door, and took a breath that rattled all the way down my ribs. Then I dialed. Ava answered on the fourth ring. Well, she drawled. Back already? That didn't take long. I've been thinking, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. About what you said. About work. Silence. Then the smugness crept back into her voice. Yeah, I figured you'd realize what's at stake. I just want to be clear, I said, watching the seconds tick by on the recording app. You were serious? You'd contact my job and tell them I wasn't taking my medication? Absolutely, she said with zero hesitation. I'll tell them you're unstable, unfit. I'll even throw in the word psychotic if I have to. She laughed. A short, sharp sound. No one's gonna trust a nutcase with kids, or a corporate paycheck. I didn't say a word. She kept going. And you know what the best part is? It doesn't even matter if it's true. All I have to do is suggest it. HR will freak out. You'll be on leave within a week. I hit stop recording and hung up mid-rant. I stared at the screen for a moment. I had it. Every word. Crystal clear. And I felt nothing. No triumph. No satisfaction. Just cold exhaustion. When I walked back out to the living room, Ethan had fallen asleep under a blanket, his Switch still in his lap. Michael was curled up next to him, trying to read the game's menu screen. He looked up at me. Is Mom coming back soon? I didn't know what to say. I sat down next to them, pulled both boys gently into my arms and whispered, Not yet. But you're safe here. I promise. Michael was quiet for a moment. Then he asked, Did she leave 'cause of us? And that shattered me. I pulled him tighter. No, sweetheart. She didn't leave because of you. She left because of who she is. That night, I ordered pizza with extra cheese. We had a contest to see who could stack the most pepperoni slices before the crust collapsed. We watched Home Alone and threw popcorn at the screen. I let them stay up past midnight. I even showed them the blanket fort trick I used to build when I was their age, a trick no one had ever used on me, and as I tucked them into bed, Michael reached out and whispered, Thanks for letting us be kids. I kissed his forehead. Always. Then he added, with a voice so soft it almost disappeared into the dark. I wish you were my real mom. I didn't cry. Not then. But later that night I sat in my bed and listened to the recording again. Every vicious word, every threat, every proof that I had been right all along. And I knew what I had to do. Tomorrow morning I would call CPS. And I wouldn't ask for help. I would demand it. They came at 6:43 a.m. I was still in my robe, hair wet, flipping pancakes for the boys. Ethan was humming at the table, drawing in one of the sketchbooks I bought him. Michael was feeding pieces of banana to the dog next door through the screen. Then came the banging. Not knocking. Banging. 3 deep, violent thuds that shook the front door like a battering ram. Ethan jumped. Michael froze. I grabbed a towel and wiped my hands, heart already racing. I wasn't expecting anyone. CPS wasn't scheduled until 10. The second I opened the door, I regretted it. Ava stood there, sunglasses on, messy hair in a top knot, and behind her was a man built like a damn mountain. He had to be 6 feet 6 inches, 300 pounds. Face like a cement block. Cold gray eyes. Arms covered in prison tattoos. My mom was behind them both, clutching her purse like she was afraid of being seen. Open the door, Ava said. No. The man didn't wait. He shoved me. Hard. I slammed into the wall, shoulder cracking against the light switch. My vision blurred. By the time I caught my breath, they were already inside. Get out of my house, I screamed, stumbling to stand. Ethan started crying from the kitchen. Michael ran toward him, shielding his little brother behind a chair. Where are they? Ava barked. Don't you dare touch them. She turned to the man. Get the boys. Now. He moved toward the hallway. I lunged at him, grabbing his arm, but it was like trying to stop a truck with a shoelace. He shrugged me off like I was nothing and kept walking. "Don't touch them," I yelled again. Then came the second blow. He grabbed me by the hair, yanked my head back and slammed me into the wall. I saw stars, my knees buckled. From the floor I heard Michael yelling, "Don't, please, don't take us." But the man didn't care. He scooped Ethan up under one arm like a duffel bag, grabbed Michael by the wrist, and dragged them out screaming. My mom just stood there. Hands folded. Blank face. Ava walked over to me as I struggled to get up. She crouched down slowly, took off her sunglasses, and spit directly into my face. "You think you're better than me now, huh? You think you can take what's mine?" she hissed. "Try me again. Next time it won't just be your house that gets wrecked." Then they left. All of them. Gone in under 4 minutes. I don't remember crawling to the phone. I just remember the taste of blood in my mouth, the pounding in my skull, and Ethan's screams echoing in my ears like gunfire. I called 911. I gave the operator everything I could remember. Description of the man, Ava, license plate of the black SUV they left in, even what my mom was wearing. I was frantic. Rambling. Crying so hard I could barely form words. I told them CPS already had an open file, that I had a recorded call proving Ava was unfit, that the children had been taken by force, that I had been assaulted. The dispatcher was calm. She told me officers were on their way and asked if I needed medical attention. I said yes. Then I sat there. On the kitchen floor. Surrounded by pancakes I never finished flipping. Holding a crumpled drawing Ethan had made. It was a picture of the three of us in front of a house with a big heart above it. He had written, "Anti-Heart Home," at the top in block letters. And I cried so hard I almost passed out. Because I wasn't their mom. But I was their safe place. And now they were gone. The EMT said I was lucky I didn't have a concussion. I didn't feel lucky. My entire body throbbed like it had been squeezed in a vice. The officer who took my statement had kind eyes, but even he looked shaken when I showed him the bruises forming on my neck and collarbone. He kept saying, "This wasn't just assault. This was abduction." I handed over the recording from Ava's call. The threats, the blackmail, the part where she admitted the kids weren't her problem anymore. He transferred it to evidence and promised to alert CPS immediately. Still, I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed with Ethan's drawing clutched to my chest, eyes wide, flinching at every car that passed by. I kept replaying it. Michael's terrified eyes, Ethan kicking his legs, the sound of my mom's voice saying nothing, doing nothing. By morning, I was done waiting. I called CPS as soon as their line opened. The agent who picked up was different this time. New name, new tone. More bureaucratic, less concerned. I explained everything again, breathless. She listened quietly and said they'd review the report and get back to me. Get back to me? "I have a recording," I said. "Of Ava threatening to lie about my mental health. Of her abandoning her kids. I was physically assaulted in my own home. By a man she brought." "I understand, ma'am. It's just, the children are back with their biological parent now, so technically." "She is not a parent," I snapped. "She is a danger. I need to know if they're safe." "I'll note the urgency," she said. Click. I wanted to scream. Instead I called Eric. He picked up before the first ring ended. He'd been waiting. I told him everything. The break-in, the bruises, the kids being dragged out. He went silent. Then he said, "You need a lawyer." "I can't afford." "You can," he interrupted. "I already wired you $5,000. Use it. Find the best you can. Today." I did. That afternoon, I walked into a family law firm with dark sunglasses covering the swelling around my eye, and handed them a copy of everything I had. The recording, the medical report, the police statement, the drawing. The lawyer, a woman named Daniela with a sharp bob and sharper mind, read through it all silently. When she finished, she looked up and said, "You want custody?" "Yes," I said. No hesitation. "You're not the legal guardian." "I know." "You're not their mother." "I know." "Then why?" I swallowed. "Because I'm the only one who gives a damn." She nodded slowly. "Then let's burn it all down." By evening, I had signed the papers to open a petition for emergency guardianship and a separate criminal complaint for breaking and entering, assault and custodial interference. It was happening. Finally. I walked home feeling like my legs weren't attached to my body. Like my skin didn't fit anymore. When I passed Ethan's favorite candy store, I stopped. Bought a bag of sour worms. I knew he wasn't there to eat them, but I needed something. anything, to hold on to. When I got home, I placed the candy and his drawing on the nightstand next to the guest bed. Then I opened the closet, looked at their little jackets still hanging there, and I made a silent promise. I would bring them home. No matter how long it took. No matter what it cost. I wasn't just their aunt anymore. I was their line in the sand. I showed up to court wearing the navy suit I saved for interviews and funerals. Hair pulled back, minimal makeup. Calm on the outside. Inside? I was shaking like a leaf in a hurricane. The courthouse smelled like old carpet and printer toner. My lawyer, Daniela, was already there, reviewing her notes with military precision. She gave me a nod when I entered, part encouragement, part warning. Ava was late. When she did show up, it was like a tornado walked in wearing ripped jeans, an oversized hoodie, and 3 layers of entitlement. Her eyes were bloodshot, hair unbrushed. She didn't look like someone walking into a courtroom. She looked like someone crawling out of a club bathroom at 3 a.m., and she didn't come alone. My mom was with her, of course, holding her elbow like a stage mom coaching her washed-up pageant star. Ava spotted me and smirked. That same condescending grin she's worn since we were kids, the one that says, "You'll always be second." She had no idea how wrong she was. The hearing began. The judge was an older man with a slow, methodical voice. He reviewed the charges. Breaking and entering. Assault. Custodial interference. My name came up first. "Miss Bennett," he said. "You're also listed on a separate petition for emergency guardianship?" "Yes, Your Honor," I replied. Ava's head snapped toward me so hard her messy bun whipped like a broken antenna. "What?" The courtroom shifted. The judge blinked. "Miss Bennett, please control yourself." "You're trying to steal my kids?" she hissed, staring at me with something between rage and disbelief. "They're not safe with you," I said evenly. "You crazy." "Miss Bennett," the judge warned again. But Ava was unraveling. "You can't do this to me. You don't get to take everything. You think just 'cause you got a nice apartment and wear heels, you're some saint now?" Daniela leaned over and whispered, "Don't engage. Let her burn herself." The judge tried to move on, asking her attorney, some overworked public defender who looked like he hadn't slept since 2009, if they were prepared to proceed. But Ava wasn't done. She stood up, turned toward me, eyes wide, nostrils flaring. "You backstabbing bitch!" she screamed, and before I could react, she launched herself across the courtroom. The room exploded into chaos. She tackled me, nails clawing at my face, hands yanking my hair like she wanted to rip it out by the roots. I stumbled backward, slamming into the bench, trying to shield my eyes as her fists came down. It felt like it lasted forever. In reality, it was maybe 15 seconds before the bailiff tackled her off me and dragged her away, kicking and shrieking. But before they got her out of the room, she bit me. Right on my forearm, hard. I screamed. Blood trickled down my sleeve. She laughed, actually laughed, as she was hauled out of the courtroom screaming, "You'll never get them, they're mine." The judge immediately called a recess. I sat there in shock, clutching my bleeding arm, trying not to cry. My mom didn't even look at me. She just quietly followed Ava out. Paramedics came. Cleaned the bite. Said I'd need a tetanus booster. I could barely hear them over the buzzing in my ears. Daniela sat beside me. "Well," she said softly, "if anyone had doubts about her fitness, they don't now." I let out a shaky laugh. "Do I get extra custody points for surviving a feral attack in a courtroom?" "You might just get everything," she replied. That night, as I lay in bed with a gauze-wrapped arm and an ice pack on my face, I listened to the voicemail Ava left from county jail. She was sobbing, blaming me, screaming that I destroyed our family. But I didn't cry. I deleted the message. Because the truth was, there had never been a family to destroy. Not for me. Not until those 2 little boys showed up on my doorstep. And I was done letting anyone take them away from me. It took 17 more months. 17 months of court dates, home inspections, background checks, witness statements, and psychological evaluations. Ava pled not guilty to the charges. Tried to say I staged the whole thing. That I attacked her first. That I brainwashed her kids. But the bite marks. The bailiff's testimony. The recording of her threatening to sabotage my career. It was all there. Stacked higher than her lies could reach. She was convicted. Sentenced to 15 years, no parole. My mom avoided prison by testifying against her, for once in her life throwing Ava under the bus. I watched her sob on the witness stand, crocodile tears falling as she said, I didn't know it would go this far. She never looked at me. And I never saw her again. After the sentencing, there was still the custody battle. Ava's ex, the boy's biological father, tried to petition for them. A man who hadn't spoken to them in over 3 years. Who once forgot Michael's birthday 2 years in a row. Who showed up to court reeking of vape juice and wearing sweatpants with a hole in the crotch. Even the judge looked unimpressed. It was brutal, expensive, exhausting. But I didn't care. Because every night I came home and looked at the untouched beds. The unopened toy chests. The framed drawings still hanging in the hallway. And I knew, I wasn't fighting for a win, I was fighting for them. And then one morning, 604 days after the boys had been ripped from my arms, the letter came. The court finds that the petitioner, Miss Elise Bennett, is granted full legal custody of minors Michael and Ethan Turner. I held the paper so tight my hands shook. I called Eric, who immediately screamed so loud I had to take the phone off speaker. He booked a flight that night to celebrate with us in person. When I picked the boys up from the foster center, they were waiting by the window, backpacks on, eyes wide like they didn't believe it was real. Ethan ran first. He flew into my arms so fast we almost toppled over. Michael followed quieter, but when he hugged me, he didn't let go for nearly 5 minutes. I knew it. He whispered into my coat. I knew you'd come back. Their rooms were already ready. Bunk beds with Star Wars sheets. Glow-in-the-dark ceiling stickers. Shelves filled with books and Lego sets. I had even framed Ethan's old drawing, the one with the crooked house and the words, Auntie Hart's home, and hung it above the staircase. They saw it when we walked in. Michael stopped, pointed. You kept it? Of course, I said. He blinked, then looked up at me and said, You really are our home now. That night, after a dinner of homemade mac and cheese and 3 rounds of Mario Kart, I tucked them in. Ethan clutched the same stuffed dog I had kept safe since that awful day. I kissed their foreheads, turned out the lights, and stood at the doorway, just watching them breathe. Peacefully. Safely. Finally. And I cried. Not because I was sad, not because I was angry, but because, for the first time in my life, I didn't feel unwanted. I didn't feel like the second daughter, or the backup plan, or the quiet girl in the background. I felt chosen, loved, needed. I wasn't their mother by blood, but I had earned every inch of the title. And I would never let anyone take it away from me again. We weren't a perfect family, but we were real. And that was more than I'd ever had before. My parents handed me a bag. If my husband hadn't trusted his gut, we wouldn't be here to tell the story. My husband turned white as a sheet and whispered, Turn the car around. Now. We were 10 minutes from the Canadian border, our kids half asleep in the back seat, and I was laughing at a joke he never made. He didn't yell, he didn't panic. He just stared ahead like he was watching a bomb tick down. I trusted him. I took the exit. When I discovered why, I never saw my parents the same way again. The plan was straightforward. Leave early, snacks in the back seat, coffee in the front, drive for a few hours, cross into Canada, hug some friends I haven't seen in a while, and pretend to enjoy potato salad. It was going to be normal, borderline boring, which was actually the goal. I was driving. I always do, primarily because I despise how my husband breaks down at the last possible moment, and also because motion sickness is one of my many talents. The kids were semi-conscious in the back seat, watching a cartoon and arguing about invisible lines drawn across the seat cushions. All 3 of them, ages 5, 7 and 10. Tiny chaos in matching neck pillows. That was fine. Not magical. Not miserable. Everything was fine until he said it. Turn around now. I didn't react at first, or I did, but not in a meaningful way. I chuckled or smirked. One of those reflexes you have when you believe someone is joking but not funny enough to warrant a laugh. Why? I asked. He did not respond right away. Just stared straight ahead and said, Please turn around. That was when I realized it was not a joke. My husband does not panic. His default settings are calm, relaxed, and occasionally tired. I've seen him handle a kitchen fire with less stress. So, I took the last exit before the border. It curved off gently, as if the road itself was giving me a second chance. His body relaxed as we left the highway. Not all the way, but enough to indicate he'd been bracing for something. Okay, I said. Want to tell me what's going on now? He shakes his head. Just drive. Drive where? I don't know. Anywhere but there. The children were beginning to notice. "Are we going the wrong way?" my middle child inquired. "We forgot something," I replied automatically. "What?" "I'll tell you later." The youngest spoke up. "Is it snacks?" I didn't respond. My husband did not speak again for a long time. We drove silently. 20 minutes, perhaps more. Just miles of trees and guilt pressing against the back of my neck. Then he instructed, "Take the next turnoff." It led nowhere. A narrow access road with no signage and no clear purpose. One of those places you only discover when you're lost or about to be. I drew away. He unbuckled his seatbelt. "Stay here." He stepped out and walked to the back of the car. I couldn't see anything from where I was, so I sat and waited. My palms were sweaty. My heart was beating strangely, quick and heavy, as if it knew something I didn't. After about a minute, the trunk closed. He returned to my window. "Can you come out?" "Why?" "I need you to see it." He didn't sound angry or scared. He sounded tired and confident. I got out. He led me to the back of the vehicle and opened the trunk. I didn't say anything, just pointed. I looked. And suddenly I forgot how to breathe. I was not scared. Not yet. Fear was still on the way. What I felt in that moment was slower and heavier, like falling through the floor of my own life. I did not touch it. I did not need to. I knew we were one wrong decision away from losing everything. The funny thing is that I thought I was the responsible one in the family. Not responsible in the sense of paying taxes and wearing sunscreen, though those are important as well. But I thought I could be the stable one, the one who didn't explode, vanish, or lie for fun, the one who tried, the one who offered help when she could afford it and boundaries when she couldn't. But looking back, I realized that being the responsible one in my family was similar to being the designated driver at a demolition derby. They did not want help. They desired cover. I gave it to them for many years. It began when I was a kid. My parents were the type of people who believed that living well was about image rather than money. Image. If you appeared successful and generous, if your Christmas lights were straight and your refrigerator contained 5 types of mustard, you were doing well. It didn't matter if the credit cards were maxed out or the gas was shut off that winter. We were doing okay. That was the script. Stick to it or be rewritten. We had years where things were tight. I recall cereal for dinner and one parent or the other suddenly working late most nights, which I later realized was code for, "We don't want you to know we can't afford things." However, there were also years when they were flush. Nobody actually used the new car, TV, or patio furniture. The money fluctuated like the weather. What did not change was the spending. I once asked my father why we didn't save more when times were good. He said, "You don't need to save if you know how to hustle." I was 8. My brother inherited all of this. The hustle, the shine, the gravitational pull of someone who can brighten a room while quietly draining your self-esteem. He was the favorite. That was hardly a secret. Not even an unattractive one. Just the truth. They liked him more. They got him. He was like them. I was not. I was boring. That's what they called me. Sometimes right in my face. Boring, overly serious. My mother once told me in the middle of a Thanksgiving dinner that my issue was that I confused discipline with personality. What about the wild part? I believed them. Because when you grow up in that type of household, you begin to believe that the only way to earn love is to remain useful, clean, and reasonable. So that is what I did. I took on responsibility. They'd call if they needed help with insurance claims or school applications. Or when my brother lost another job and someone had to fill the gap. I gave all I could. Not too much. Just enough to prevent things from falling apart. Just enough to avoid being the bad guy. Even when they caused it to pain. Even when they portrayed every no as selfish. However, I gave because they were my parents. Because it seemed easier than the alternative. Then the question changed. This was approximately 4 months before the trip. My brother's son, my nephew, was struggling in school. They claimed he was bullied, didn't fit in, was anxious, and withdrawn. They had him evaluated, and apparently a therapist suggested a smaller environment. They discovered a private school that was very exclusive, very expensive, and, as they put it, life-changing. They couldn't afford it, but they were able to get him conditionally accepted if they paid a deposit. They just needed assistance. Only a little bit. Just to secure it. They'd repay me, of course. My stomach dropped the moment the words left their mouths. It's not that I didn't care. I did. That is the worst part. I liked the youngster. I wished good things for him. But I was also familiar with this pattern. I knew how it started and ended. I said no. I said it gently, as if to someone holding a glass knife. I cannot afford private school. I have 3 children of my own. We do not offer private school. I apologize. They did not yell. They just went quiet and cold. My mother replied, "Of course I forgot. You have rules." And then we stopped talking for a while. Until the reunion came about. Suddenly, everything became cheerful again. They were delighted to see us. They had figured things out. The school, the reunion, and the drive. Everything was going well. I didn't ask how. I told myself it wasn't my business. They asked if we would be willing to carry an extra bag in our car. Their car was too full, so we had the SUV. "Sure," I replied. "Just let me know." That was a few days before our trip. Then as we were packing to leave, my father handed me the red Duff. "Won't fit in ours," he replied. "Just this one." I took it without thinking. We just tossed it in with our luggage, the kids' backpacks, and a cooler full of juice boxes. Didn't even unzip it. I didn't wonder why they were suddenly so relaxed. I didn't ask why the people who were struggling to pay for school, groceries, and gas, and who guilt-tripped me for not helping, were suddenly fine. They smiled and waved as we backed out of the driveway, as if they had no care in the world, and I remember thinking, just for a second, weird. They appeared to be very happy for once. I didn't think much about it at the time. Just another bag, just another trip. Just another family squabble I didn't want to get involved in. Perhaps I should have asked more questions. Perhaps I was overly naive. He didn't sound angry or scared. He sounded tired and confident. "I need you to see it," he explained. I got out. He guided me to the back of the car and opened the trunk. He did not speak. I just unzipped the red Duff and folded back the sweatshirt. And that's when everything came to a stop. Packets were wedged between clothes, stuffed into what appeared to be a child's toiletry bag, and sealed in plastic. Not one. Not particularly well hidden. Just beneath layers that would not have fooled anyone doing their job for more than 5 seconds. I stared, not fully understanding, then fully comprehending all at once. Not medicine. Not vitamins. Not anything with a purpose that did not involve handcuffs, lawyers, or headlines. I did not speak. I could not. Every muscle in my chest seized. It felt like drowning in slow motion. He did not say, "Look what they did." He did not state, "This is what I thought." He simply zipped the bag closed again and let the silence complete the sentence. I took a step backward. The gravel crunched under my shoes as if it were somewhere else, unrelated to anything real. "They put that in our car," I finally explained. My voice sounded thin. "They put that in our car," he said, nodding. "With the kids?" Another nod. I looked up to the sky for some reason. It was still blue. It still seemed like a good day. I despised that. It felt wrong, as if the sky hadn't received the memo. "How did you know?" I inquired. He did not respond right away. Just stared at the closed trunk, as if it were still open underneath. When they gave us the bag, he ended up saying. Something in their eyes. The way they smiled, like it was already done, like they were sure it would work. He shrugged and shook his head, as if he was trying to get the memory out. I couldn't stop thinking about it the whole drive. Then just before the border, it hit me. He looked at me. I wasn't sure, but I knew. And it was somehow worse. That someone else had witnessed it. What I'd trained myself not to see. I turned around and walked slowly back to the driver's seat, got in, closed the door, and sat for a minute, allowing the heat to soak through the windshield as my hands shook. Then I started the car and drove. The kids did not ask this time. They were deep into a cartoon. They'd forgotten about Canada, Auntie Karen and the cousins, and the small toy bags I'd secretly packed for the reunion. We drove for quite a while. Highway, side roads, directionless. My phone started vibrating. My mother was first, followed by my father, and so on. I didn't respond. Neither did he. We did not need to. We already knew what they were going to say. Where are you now? What happened? Are you okay? Where is the bag? We didn't respond. Just kept driving, with the screen flashing every few minutes like a tiny alarm. We eventually turned off toward their house. It felt almost automatic, like we were on rails. We did not talk about it. We both knew what needed to happen. I pulled into the driveway and parked. Despite the fact that it was the middle of the afternoon, the front porch light remained on from the previous night. He got out first and walked around to the trunk. I followed. We did not say anything. I reached for the mat and discovered the key, which was still in the same place it had always been. Taped to the back of a fake rock my father had purchased from a catalog that also sold deer whistles and solar-powered frogs. He opened the front door. We walked in. The air smelled of old coffee and carpet cleaner. We placed the red duff right inside the hallway. I didn't open it. I did not make any adjustments. Set it down like a quiet bomb that didn't need to be detonated to destroy everything. He turned the knob and locked it behind us. We got back into the car. Still no words. I believe we both felt that speaking would contaminate something. Later that day, when the kids were asleep and the house was quiet, I answered the phone. It was my mom. Her voice was bright and fake, as if this were a muffin-related call. "Oh honey, we were very worried. We didn't know what had happened. You just disappeared." I did not say anything. "Is everything all right?" Still nothing. "Where is the bag?" I let that sit for a moment. Then I said, "We dropped it off at your house." A pause. "If it was that important," I added, "maybe you should have taken it yourself." Her voice did not change, but I could hear it. The catch. That flash of recognition told me she knew exactly what I meant, and I knew exactly what she had done. She said nothing. Neither did I. And then I said, "We aren't doing this. Do not call again." I hung up. That was it. No screams. There is no final speech. Just a line drawn and a door closed. And that should have been the end. But it wasn't. Not yet. They showed up on Wednesday. No warning. No text. Instead of guilt, the doorbell rang as if they were delivering muffins. I knew it was them before I even looked. There's a certain pressure that comes through a front door, like a bad odor or static in the air, especially when it's people who believe they've done nothing wrong. I opened the door just enough to step outside before closing it firmly behind me. My parents stood there as if they hadn't just tried to blow up my life with a smile and a duffel bag. My mother gave me a tight, practiced grin that was supposed to appear warm, but didn't reach my eyes. "We wanted to check in," she said, as if we were in a group chat and I had overlooked a brunch invitation. My father added, "We thought maybe we could clear the air." I said nothing. I just crossed my arms and waited. My mother hesitated and then said, "We didn't know how much you understood." There it was. The tell. They knew I knew. They just didn't realize how much I believed in myself. I tilted my head. "Do you mean the bag?" None of them responded, which was sufficient. "You put it in our trunk," I replied. "With your grandchildren in the back seat." My mother swallowed. "We didn't think it would be a big deal." "It wasn't going to be anything," my father said, attempting to keep his voice even. "Just something to help with your debt. That is all." "We were desperate," my mother added. "You wouldn't help." There it was again. The fallback excuse. One-size-fits-all defense. "You would not help." As if this was simply a response to my lack of generosity. Like their betrayal was an unavoidable result of my boundaries. I did not yell. I did not cry. "You didn't just betray me," I replied. "You risked our lives." Neither one of them spoke. "You endangered your daughter, your son-in-law, your grandchildren." My father shifted his weight. My mother blinked, as if she was about to cry but couldn't quite get there. "We're done," I replied. "Do not call. Do not come here. You don't get to see the children. This is over." She opened her mouth. I could already hear it forming. The classic, "You're being dramatic." Or perhaps, "You'll cool off." Instead she simply said, "You will come around. You always do." I turned and walked back inside, locking the door behind me. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't question whether she was correct. 3 days later, I arrived at the school to pick up the kids. They were not there. My stomach dropped so quickly. I could not speak. I simply looked at the teacher as if she had told me my house was on fire. "Oh, they were already picked up," she explained, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Your parents said you'd ask them to." I can't remember driving. I remember being in the car and hearing the engine, but nothing in between. They were visiting my parents' house. Of course. They were inside. It appeared that a birthday party had detonated. Toys, candy, balloons, and a whole Lego set cost more than my weekly grocery budget. The kids were glowing, sugar high, clutching new items, and laughing like it was Disneyland. My parents were acting like everything was fine. My mother was slicing cake. My father was on the floor building something that beeped. It was surreal, like walking into a parallel universe where they were the kind of grandparents who valued giving over receiving. But they were not. And this was not love. This was strategy. Emotional bribery. Affection was weaponized. They had never spoiled the kids before. Not like this. Not ever. But then, after we cut them off, there's Santa Claus holding a debit card. I stood there for a second, trying to recall how it felt to give someone the benefit of the doubt. I could not. "We're leaving," I explained. The children whined. "But why?" Grandmother said. "We are leaving, now." They did not understand. Of course they did not. How could they? They were told yes by people who had spent their entire lives saying no. They liked it. It was easy to enjoy. "Can we keep the toys?" One of them inquired, clutching a stuffed bear as if it contained answers. I paused just for a second. Then I said, "Yes." Because taking away the toys would make me the villain, and I wasn't going to let my parents win. As we left, my mother called out to me softly and sing-songy, "They will get back to us. They always do." She spoke as if it were a fact. She said it like a promise. She said it as if she still believed she could win. That night, I wasn't waiting for a magical sign or an emotional breakdown. I simply sat down on the bed, looked at my husband and said, "We have to leave." He did not ask why. He did not need to. "I don't want them around the children. Not in school. Not in the grocery store. Not down the block, pretending to be harmless." He nodded slowly, as if he were already halfway there. "You mentioned North Carolina before. I told you. Your company maintains an office there. Your parents live there. I wasn't prepared then. I am now." He nodded again. "The transfer is still on the table." "Good," I said. "Let's take it." There's no drama. Without hesitation. Just a quiet decision to burn the bridge and never look back. I didn't need vengeance. I needed some distance. And a fresh start somewhere they could not find us. After a few months we arrived in North Carolina. The mountains were beautiful. The air smelled like pine and new beginnings. The kids were attending new schools. His parents, who lived 20 minutes away, were warm, grounded, and drama-free, and they wanted to help. We did not tell anyone where we went. We've blocked numbers. Disappeared. And not in the dramatic storming off to find yourself type of way, in the sense that peace is something we all deserve. One day, I received a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Later, I listened. I barely spoke to my cousin. "Hey, your mother says she does not know where you are. She's very upset. You said you had just cut off contact. I'm not sure what's going on, but family matters." I deleted the message. I did not get a call back. They did not explain, because by then, all I cared about was this: we were safe. We were free. We did not disappear. We escaped. It was approximately 6 months later. New state, new school, new routines. I'd almost grown accustomed to not checking my phone with dread. The silence was still unsettling, but it wasn't as frightening. Just be still. And then I received an email from my brother. The subject line reads, "Emergency, please read." I stared at it for a while. I considered deleting it unread, considered marking it as spam. Instead, I opened it. It was long, frantic, poorly punctuated. What is the gist? Our parents had been arrested again. This time it wasn't because we were stupid, though that was a factor, but because we actually did the thing they almost arrested us for. They attempted to smuggle something through the border themselves. No middlemen. There are no family scapegoats. Just a trunk full of product and 2 people in their 60s who still believed rules were suggestions. Clearly they were caught. The email concluded with a plea. They need assistance. They need money to hire a lawyer. This is serious. You must set the past aside and show up. You are family. I read the line 3 times. Then I pressed reply. All I wrote was, I showed up once. I won't do it again. And I intended it. I did not hear anything else for a while. I did not need to. But eventually, word got back to me. As it always does. Cousins talk. Family trees have rotted, but their roots are deep. They were charged with possession with the intent to distribute and attempting to cross an international border with controlled substances. A few pounds. Enough for intent. Not enough for headlines. They accepted a plea deal. Each person will serve 4 years. Not life-changing. But it's not nothing. Enough time to reflect on what they had done, assuming they were capable of doing so. Which, frankly, I doubt. The part of me that used to cringe when people mentioned second chances is silent now. We have a life here. It is not perfect. But this is ours. The children laugh more. My husband sleeps better. And I have not had to translate guilt into silence in a long time. What about the rest of it? I do not regret setting the boundary. Not for 1 second.